42. Gospel legends gone forever. The truth will make you cry. What if I told you that some of the most powerful voices in gospel, the very singers who laid the foundation for soul, R&B, and even rock are gone, and their stories have been buried with them? From thunderous choirs that shook churches to soloists whose voices could bring audiences to tears, these legends left us far too soon. But their legacies are alive, waiting to be rediscovered. Stay tuned, because you won't believe the triumphs, the tragedies, and the untold secrets behind their journeys. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's honor these icons together. Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson, born on October 26, 1911 in New Orleans, Louisiana, is widely celebrated as the First Lady of Gospel. From her earliest days, music was her lifeline, a source of strength during a childhood marked by poverty and hardship. After losing her mother at a young age, Mahalia was raised by her aunt, who instilled in her the discipline of church life. She began singing in the choir at Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where her voice stood out with its unmatched depth and power. Even as a child, it was clear she had been gifted with something extraordinary. At just 16, she left New Orleans for Chicago, determined to build a better life and pursue her calling through gospel music. In Chicago, she came under the mentorship of Thomas A. Dorsey, the man often referred to as the father of gospel music. Their partnership helped reshape gospel into a genre that blended the spiritual fervor of church music with the raw emotionality of blues and jazz. Her breakout moment came in 1947 with the release of Move On, Up a Little Higher. The record sold over 8 million copies, a staggering achievement for a gospel song at that time, and catapulted her onto the global stage. Unlike many singers who crossed over to secular music for financial gain, Mahalia remained true to her mission of honoring God through every performance. What made Mahalia truly remarkable was her ability to transcend the walls of the church. She sang in the world's most prestigious venues, from Carnegie Hall to packed stadiums across Europe. Her performances carried a spiritual intensity that touched listeners whether or not they understood the words. In 1958, she made history as the first gospel singer to perform at the Grammy Awards, cementing her role as a trailblazer in American music. Her television appearances introduced gospel to millions of households, broadening its reach far beyond its traditional roots. She was not only a singer, but also a voice for justice. A close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahalia played a vital role in the civil rights movement. At the 1963 March on Washington, she delivered a soul-stirring rendition of "I've Been Buked and I've Been Scorned" before an audience of more than 250,000. Moments later, she famously urged Dr. King, "Tell them about the dream, Martin," inspiring him to deliver the iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. Her music was more than art. It was a weapon of hope and change during one of America's most turbulent eras. Her career spanned decades, earning her Grammy Awards invitations to sing for presidents and international acclaim, yet she always maintained her humility and devotion to faith. On January 27, 1972, Mahalia Jackson passed away at the age of 60. Her funeral in Chicago drew thousands, from everyday worshipers to world leaders, all united in honoring the woman whose voice defined gospel music. Today, her legacy lives on as the very standard of gospel artistry, a reminder of how faith and music can transform lives. What do you think gave Mahalia Jackson's voice the power to move people across cultures and languages? Thomas A. Dorsey. Thomas A. Dorsey, born on July 1, 1899 in Villa Rica, Georgia, is remembered as the father of gospel music. His life journey took him from playing blues in nightclubs to shaping an entire genre that blended sacred devotion with the rhythm and emotional intensity of the Black musical tradition. Raised as the son of a Baptist preacher, Dorsey grew up surrounded by church hymns, but he was also drawn to the secular sounds of ragtime and blues that dominated the early 20th century. When he moved to Chicago in 1916, during the Great Migration, he found himself at the heart of a thriving Black cultural community. It was here that his music career began to flourish. In his early years, Dorsey became a skilled pianist and arranger, playing alongside blues legends like Ma Rainey. Known at the time as Georgia Tom, he composed and performed secular blues that gained commercial success. Yet his life took a profound turn after experiencing personal tragedy. The pivotal moment came in 1932 when his wife, Nettie Harper, died in childbirth and their newborn son passed away shortly after. Devastated by grief, Dorsey turned his focus fully to gospel music, channeling his sorrow into compositions that would forever alter church worship. His song, "Precious Lord, Take My Hand," became one of the most beloved gospel hymns of all time, offering comfort and hope to millions. Dorsey's genius lay in his ability to fuse blues progressions with religious lyrics, creating a sound that resonated both emotionally and spiritually. His songs weren't just hymns. They were heartfelt testimonies of struggle, faith, and resilience. By combining the raw honesty of the blues with the uplifting message of gospel, he gave voice to the lived experiences of African Americans during times of hardship and transition. This new form of sacred music spread rapidly through black churches, eventually becoming a cornerstone of American culture. By the 1930s, Dorsey had firmly established himself as a pioneer. He served as the music director at Pilgrim Baptist Church in Chicago for over 40 years, training choirs and mentoring young artists. Perhaps his most famous protege was Mahalia Jackson, whose soaring voice brought his compositions to worldwide audiences. Together, they advanced gospel music from a regional expression into a global movement. His songs, such as "Peace in the Valley" and "Take My Hand, Precious Lord," were recorded by countless artists, including Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, and even Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who often requested the hymn at rallies and meetings. Do you think gospel music would have reached the same global influence without Thomas A. Dorsey's decision to merge blues and church hymns? Throughout his lifetime, Dorsey wrote more than 1,000 songs, half of them gospel. He co-founded the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses in 1933, an institution that continues to thrive today. His leadership provided a platform for gospel singers, musicians, and composers to share their talents and strengthen the community. Despite resistance from some church leaders who initially rejected his fusion of blues and sacred music, Dorsey's style eventually gained acceptance and set the standard for modern gospel. Thomas A. Dorsey passed away on January 23, 1993, at the age of 93, leaving behind a monumental legacy. His vision transformed not only church music, but also American music as a whole, laying the groundwork for future genres like R&B, soul, and rock and roll. Today, he is remembered not just as a composer, but as a cultural architect whose songs continue to inspire faith, healing, and unity across the world. James Cleveland. James Cleveland, born on December 5, 1931 in Chicago, Illinois, is often called the king of gospel music. His remarkable career as a singer-songwriter, choir director, and visionary forever transformed the sound of gospel. Raised on the south side of Chicago, Cleveland grew up in the Pilgrim Baptist Church, a congregation deeply tied to the birth of gospel itself, under the guidance of Thomas A. Dorsey. As a young boy, Cleveland was captivated by church choirs, and despite having a rough, raspy voice, he leaned into it, developing a unique singing style that stood out. Rather than hiding his vocal limitations, he turned them into strengths, delivering songs with raw emotion and sincerity that audiences could not ignore. By his teenage years, Cleveland was already working with established gospel groups. He gained experience with the famed Gospelaires, and later with the Caravans, a group that launched many legendary careers. His songwriting quickly made waves. He penned classics like "Lord Do It, Peace Be Still," and "God Is." These songs weren't just gospel hits. They became staples of church worship services across America. Cleveland had a gift for writing music that spoke directly to the struggles and hopes of everyday people. As his reputation grew, Cleveland founded the Southern California Community Choir in the 1960s, a group that would become a model for modern gospel choirs. Under his direction, choirs moved beyond traditional hymn arrangements into more dynamic, full-bodied performances with rich harmonies and emotional intensity. His influence helped gospel music expand into mainstream recognition, and his concerts often attracted audiences that crossed racial and denominational lines. One of the defining moments of Cleveland's career came in 1972 when he collaborated with Aretha Franklin on her groundbreaking live album, Amazing Grace. Recorded at the New Temple Missionary Baptist Church in Los Angeles, the album featured Cleveland conducting the choir and playing piano. The project became one of the best-selling gospel albums of all time, cementing both Franklin's and Cleveland's place in gospel history. This collaboration also introduced gospel to a broader audience, many of whom had never stepped foot in a black church. Have you ever listened to James Cleveland's Peace Be Still? If so, do you think it still carries the same emotional power today as it did decades ago? Throughout his career, Cleveland recorded more than 100 albums, won 4 Grammy Awards, and earned the title King of Gospel for his unmatched contributions. He also founded the Gospel Music Workshop of America GMWA in 1968, an organization that remains one of the most influential networks for gospel musicians worldwide. The GMWA provided opportunities for aspiring artists to learn, collaborate, and grow, ensuring that gospel music would continue to evolve while staying true to its spiritual roots. Sadly, James Cleveland passed away on February 9, 1991, at the age of 59. His death left a void in gospel music, but his legacy lives on through the countless choirs, singers, and churches that still perform his songs every week. Cleveland's music continues to inspire faith and unity, proving that gospel is not just a genre, but a movement. He showed the world that even a rough, imperfect voice could carry the weight of divine truth, as long as it was fueled by passion and sincerity. Clara Ward. Clara Ward, born on April 21, 1924 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is remembered as one of the most innovative and dynamic figures in gospel music. Known for her extraordinary voice stage presence and groundbreaking performances, she pushed gospel far beyond its traditional boundaries. Raised in a deeply religious household, Clara grew up surrounded by music. Her mother, Gertrude Ward, played a pivotal role in shaping her career, managing and guiding her from childhood. Together, they formed the famous Ward Singers, a group that would redefine gospel in the 1940s and 1950s. Clara's leadership, alongside her mother's determination, set the stage for gospel music to step into the national spotlight. The Ward Singers became a cultural phenomenon. Clara's powerful contralto voice carried songs with unmatched passion, while her sister Willa and other members of the group created harmonies that electrified audiences. They were not afraid to break tradition, incorporating choreography, colorful costumes, and energetic stage movements into their performances. Some in the church world criticized them for being too flamboyant, but their innovative style brought gospel into theaters, concert halls, and even television, helping the genre reach new audiences. Songs like Surely God is Able and How I Got Over became gospel standards, earning them fans across America and beyond. What made Clara truly unforgettable was her stage charisma. Unlike many gospel singers who remained reserved, Clara commanded the spotlight with confidence. She was one of the first to treat gospel performance as both ministry and entertainment, balancing deep spirituality with a polished presentation. This blend was controversial at the time, but ultimately influential, paving the way for future gospel stars to embrace broader audiences without abandoning their religious roots. By the 1950s, the Ward Singers were touring internationally, spreading gospel to Europe and Asia. Clara herself gained recognition outside the church, performing at prestigious venues such as Carnegie Hall and even singing for U.S. presidents. Her artistry blurred the line between gospel and popular music, and many secular performers, including Aretha Franklin, cited her as an influence. Aretha's mother, Barbara Siggers. Franklin was a gospel singer who often shared the stage with Clara, and young Aretha grew up watching her, learning what it meant to command an audience. Do you think gospel music would have reached mainstream stages so quickly if Clara Ward hadn't dared to break tradition with bold performances? Despite her enormous success, Clara Ward's life was not without struggles. Behind the glamour and groundbreaking career, she often clashed with her mother over control of the group, and personal hardships weighed heavily on her. By the 1960s, health issues began to slow her down, though she remained a respected and admired figure in gospel circles. Tragically, she suffered several strokes, and her health declined rapidly in the early 1970s. Clara Ward passed away on January 16, 1973, at just 48 years old. Her death shocked the gospel community, as many believed she still had much more to give. Yet her influence is undeniable. Her fearless innovation helped gospel music break free from the confines of the church and move onto the world stage. Today, she is remembered not only as a phenomenal singer, but also as a visionary who reshaped gospel into a modern force inspiring generations of artists to follow her path. Andraé Crouch. Andraé Crouch, born on July 1, 1942 in San Francisco, California, is often called the father of modern gospel. His ability to bridge the gap between traditional church music and contemporary styles made him one of the most influential gospel musicians of the 20th century. Growing up in Los Angeles, Crouch was immersed in the church from an early age, as his father was a pastor. Remarkably, he began playing piano at age 11 without formal training. He claimed that he simply prayed for the ability to play, and from that point on, he could. This gift became the foundation of a career that would inspire both sacred and secular musicians around the world. In 1965, Crouch founded The Disciples, a gospel group that quickly gained fame for its fresh, innovative sound. Unlike the strictly traditional choirs of earlier decades, Andraé infused gospel with elements of pop, R&B, and even jazz. His songs, such as The Blood Will Never Lose Its Power and Soon and Very Soon, resonated across denominational and racial boundaries. By the 1970s, his recordings and live performances were attracting mainstream attention, earning him a reputation as a gospel trailblazer. He wasn't afraid to modernize arrangements with drums, guitars, and contemporary harmonies, an approach that drew younger audiences to gospel while still retaining its spiritual power. Crouch's impact extended far beyond the church. His songwriting earned him crossover recognition in Hollywood, where he contributed to film soundtracks including The Lion King, The Color Purple, and The Prince of Egypt. He also worked as a choral arranger for iconic artists like Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Elton John. These collaborations brought gospel sensibilities into popular culture without diluting its message. His ability to walk between sacred and secular spaces earned him respect as both a spiritual leader and a musical genius. Do you think gospel music would have influenced pop culture so deeply in the 1980s and 1990s if Andraé Crouch hadn't opened those doors with his bold, modern style? Over the course of his career, Crouch recorded more than 20 albums and won 7 Grammy Awards, 3 Dove Awards, and an Academy Award nomination. He was also one of the few gospel musicians to earn a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Despite these achievements, he remained deeply committed to ministry. After the death of his father, Crouch, and his twin sister Sandra, co-pastored Christ Memorial Church in Los Angeles, where he continued to blend music and preaching to inspire new generations. Crouch's life was not without struggles. He faced health issues, including bouts with cancer, and encountered criticism from those who felt his style strayed too far from traditional gospel. Yet his resilience and faith carried him through. He continued performing and recording until late in life, never losing his passion for spreading the gospel through music. On January 8, 2015, Andraé Crouch passed away at age 72 due to complications from a heart attack. His funeral was attended by celebrities, pastors, and countless fans who recognized the breadth of his influence. Today, his songs are sung in churches worldwide, his arrangements still studied by musicians, and his legacy honored as the man who reshaped gospel for the modern era. Edwin Hawkins. Edwin Hawkins, born on August 18, 1943 in Oakland, California, will forever be remembered as the man who brought gospel music into the mainstream spotlight with his groundbreaking arrangement of "Oh Happy Day." Growing up in a devout Christian family, Hawkins showed musical talent early, playing keyboards and directing choirs by the time he was a teenager. His deep connection to both church worship and the rhythms of contemporary black music laid the groundwork for a career that would forever change gospel's relationship with popular culture. In 1967, Hawkins formed the Northern California State Youth Choir with a group of friends and young singers from local churches. Their purpose was simple: to raise funds for a church project by recording an album. What came from that session, however, was extraordinary. The choir's joyful, modernized version of the 18th century hymn, "Oh Happy Day," became an international sensation almost overnight after its release in 1969. The single sold over 7 million copies worldwide and won Hawkins his first Grammy Award. Suddenly, gospel music, which had largely remained confined to churches and specialized audiences, was on mainstream radio, TV shows, and in record stores across the globe. Unlike many before him, Hawkins wasn't afraid to incorporate elements of R&B, soul, and even pop into his gospel arrangements. His use of modern instruments, upbeat rhythms, and contemporary harmonies made gospel more accessible to people outside the church. While some traditionalists criticized this approach, Hawkins defended it as a way to share the message of faith with broader audiences. His success opened doors for future gospel artists to achieve mainstream recognition, from Kirk Franklin to Yolanda Adams. Do you think "Oh Happy Day" became such a timeless anthem because of its joyful sound, or because its message resonated with people beyond the church walls? Hawkins didn't stop with just one hit. Alongside his brother, Walter Hawkins, a celebrated gospel singer and composer in his own right, Edwin continued to record and perform with the Edwin Hawkins Singers. Their albums, such as Children Get Together and New World, carried both spiritual conviction and musical innovation. Hawkins was also an in-demand collaborator, working with secular stars who admired his artistry, including Bob Dylan and Johnny Mathis. His ability to cross boundaries without losing his identity as a gospel artist made him a true pioneer. Throughout his career, Hawkins earned 4 Grammy Awards and was nominated 9 times. He continued touring internationally, bringing gospel music to audiences who had never before experienced its energy live. Beyond his artistry, Hawkins was also committed to mentoring young musicians, ensuring that gospel would continue to thrive through the next generation. His influence is visible in every gospel artist who dares to push boundaries while remaining rooted in spiritual truth. On January 15, 2018, Edwin Hawkins passed away at the age of 74 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. His death marked the end of an era, but his impact lives on. Every time "Oh Happy Day" is sung, whether in a church service, a school choir, or even a movie soundtrack, it reminds the world of the man who proved gospel could be both holy and universal. Edwin Hawkins' legacy is that of a visionary who dared to make gospel a joyful sound for all people, regardless of faith or background. Walter Hawkins. Walter Lee Hawkins, born on May 18, 1949 in Oakland, California, emerged as one of gospel music's most gifted singers, composers, and pastors. Though he was the younger brother of Edwin Hawkins, Walter built a distinctive legacy of his own, crafting music that balanced deep spirituality with a tender, soulful style. Growing up in a musical family, Walter was surrounded by the sound of church choirs and gospel hymns from an early age. He first gained national attention as a member of the Edwin Hawkins Singers, contributing to the group's global success with their 1969 hit, "Oh Happy Day." Yet while Edwin was celebrated as the innovator who pushed gospel into mainstream awareness, Walter became known for his sensitivity, warmth, and deeply personal songwriting that spoke to the heart of faith. In the early 1970s, Walter branched out on his own, forming the Love Center Choir in Oakland. This ensemble became one of the most beloved gospel choirs in America, known for its lush harmonies and emotionally charged performances. Hawkins's 1975 debut album, Love Alive, became a landmark recording in gospel history. Blending contemporary rhythms with heartfelt praise, the project resonated with audiences across denominations and sold hundreds of thousands of copies, an extraordinary feat for a gospel release at the time. The Love Alive series would eventually span multiple albums, all of which became cornerstones of modern gospel. Walter's voice set him apart. Unlike many gospel artists who relied on sheer power, his tenor carried a gentleness and sincerity that invited listeners into intimate moments of worship. Songs such as Going Up Yonder and Changed became staples in churches nationwide, offering comfort in times of grief and joy in times of celebration. His ability to write music that felt both personal and universal made him a cherished figure in gospel communities. When you hear a song like Going Up Yonder, does it feel more like a song of sorrow or a song of hope? Beyond music. Walter Hawkins was also a pastor. In 1973, he founded the Love Center Church in Oakland, where he blended preaching with his love for music. The church quickly became a hub for spiritual and artistic growth, drawing worshipers from across the country. It was here that Walter mentored young artists and gave a platform to future gospel stars, nurturing talents who would carry the tradition forward. His leadership reflected his belief that gospel music wasn't just entertainment, but a ministry with the power to heal and transform lives. Walter's career earned him numerous accolades, including a Grammy Award in 1981 for his collaboration on the Lord's Prayer. Despite his fame, he remained grounded, often crediting God, his family, and his choir for his success. His humility and gentle spirit made him beloved not only by fans, but also by fellow musicians who saw him as a model of grace and authenticity. Tragically, Walter Hawkins's life was cut short when he passed away on July 11, 2010, at the age of 61, after a battle with pancreatic cancer. His funeral drew thousands with tributes from across the gospel world, celebrating his unmatched contributions. Today, his songs remain fixtures in church services, funerals, and celebrations, carrying his legacy forward. While Edwin Hawkins is remembered for bringing gospel to the global stage, Walter is remembered for bringing gospel directly into the heart, with a tender sincerity that touched lives deeply. LaShawn Pace. Tarian LaShawn Pace, born on September 6, 1961 in Atlanta, Georgia, was one of the most powerful and beloved gospel voices of her generation. A member of the renowned Anointed Pace Sisters, LaShawn grew up in a devout family where music and ministry were inseparable from daily life. From an early age, it was clear she was destined for greatness. Her commanding soprano, capable of soaring through the rafters of any sanctuary, set her apart even within her talented family. In the 1970s and 1980s, the Pace sisters became well known for their heartfelt performances, but it was LaShawn who quickly emerged as the breakout star. Her solo career took flight in 1990 with the release of He Lives, an album that introduced the world to her unforgettable classic, I Know I've Been Changed. The project cemented her as a force in gospel music, with her voice delivering both raw power and emotional vulnerability. Unlike some singers who relied solely on technical skill, LaShawn combined precision with a spiritual intensity that made every performance feel like a divine encounter. Fans often described her singing as more than music. It was ministry in its purest form. LaShawn's music wasn't just about vocal acrobatics. It carried deep messages of faith, endurance, and triumph over hardship. Songs like There's a Leak in This Old Building and Act Like You Know became anthems in churches across America. Her live performances were legendary, often leaving audiences in tears or on their feet shouting praises. She had the rare ability to transform a concert hall into a revival service, blurring the line between performance and worship. When you listen to a voice as powerful as LaShawn Pace's, do you feel more inspired by her technical brilliance or by the spiritual fire behind her delivery? Despite her extraordinary talent, LaShawn's life was marked by trials. She faced health struggles and personal tragedy, including the heartbreaking loss of her daughter Xenia in 2001 at just 11 years old. This devastating event shook her deeply, yet she continued to pour her pain and faith into her music, making her artistry even more impactful. Her resilience in the face of suffering resonated with fans who saw her not only as a singer, but also as a living testimony of faith under fire. In addition to her music, LaShun made cultural waves with her appearance in the 1992 movie The Leap of Faith, starring Steve Martin, which introduced her to broader audiences outside the church community. She was also inducted into the Christian Music Hall of Fame in 2007, a recognition of her lasting contributions to the genre. Throughout her career, she released multiple albums that consistently reminded listeners of the raw, unfiltered power of gospel music at its best. On March 21, 2022, LaShun Pace passed away at the age of 60 due to organ failure. Her death was mourned across the gospel world, with tributes pouring in from fans, pastors, and fellow artists alike. Many remembered her not only for her extraordinary voice, but also for her authenticity, humility, and unshakable faith. Today, her recordings remain a cornerstone of modern gospel, ensuring that her voice continues to inspire worshipers and singers for generations to come. Inez Andrews. Inez Andrews, born on April 14, 1929 in Birmingham, Alabama, was a gospel powerhouse whose voice earned her the title the High Priestess of Gospel. Known for her astonishing vocal range, especially her ability to climb to soaring high notes with effortless precision, Andrews stood out as one of the greatest gospel singers of the 20th century. She began singing in church as a child, and by her teenage years it was clear her gift was extraordinary. With a voice that could cut through the largest sanctuary and a spirit that carried conviction, she quickly rose to prominence in the gospel world. In the early 1950s, Andrews joined the legendary group The Caravans, one of gospel's most influential ensembles. Under the leadership of Albertina Walker, The Caravans became a training ground for many future gospel icons, and Andrews' voice gave the group a distinctive edge. Her breakout moment came with the hit song Mary Don't You Weep. Her piercing high notes on that recording became legendary, and the song remains one of gospel's most enduring classics. Fans often recall that when Andrews sang, it wasn't just music, it was an experience that left the audience feeling spiritually lifted and overwhelmed. Her ability to combine technical brilliance with emotional storytelling made her a favorite not just in churches but also on concert stages. Unlike many singers who specialized in either traditional gospel or more modern interpretations, Andrews managed to master both. She could deliver an old spiritual with haunting sincerity and then shift into a contemporary arrangement that felt fresh and new. This versatility ensured her career remained vibrant for decades, with audiences never tiring of her performances. When you hear a gospel singer hit powerful high notes like Inez Andrews, do you focus more on the technical skill or the spiritual emotion behind the sound? Beyond her work with the Caravans, Andrews also had a successful solo career. Her 1972 hit, Lord Don't Move the Mountain, showcased her ability to deliver songs with both passion and precision. The track became a gospel staple covered by numerous artists and solidified her status as a leading figure in the genre. Over the years, she released multiple albums and continued to tour nationally and internationally, spreading the message of gospel music to audiences far beyond the church. Andrews was also deeply committed to ministry. She saw her music as more than performance. It was a calling. She frequently spoke about how gospel was not entertainment, but a way to touch souls, heal hearts, and bring people closer to God. Her sincerity and devotion made her beloved by fans and peers alike. Many younger artists looked up to her as both a mentor and an inspiration, and she gladly shared her wisdom to keep the tradition of gospel strong for future generations. On December 19, 2012, Inez Andrews passed away at the age of 83 after battling cancer. Her funeral was a grand celebration of her life, attended by gospel luminaries and fans who had been moved by her music for decades. Even in her later years, she had continued to sing with the same passion that defined her early career. Today, her legacy endures through her recordings, and she is remembered as a trailblazer whose high notes symbolized the very heights of gospel music itself. Daryl Lynn Coley, born on October 30, 1955 in Berkeley, California, was a gospel legend whose unmatched vocal artistry made him one of the most respected and beloved singers of his generation. Known for his wide vocal range, impeccable control, and ability to pour raw emotion into every note, Coley was often described as a singer who could make audiences feel the presence of God through his music. Growing up, Daryl's mother was a devout Christian who introduced him to church life while his stepfather exposed him to jazz greats like John Coltrane and Miles Davis. This dual influence of gospel and jazz shaped the unique style that would define his career. As a teenager, Coley sang in choirs and developed a reputation for his remarkable vocal agility. By the early 1970s, he was performing professionally, eventually joining the gospel group Helen Stevens and the Voices of Christ. He later sang with gospel legends like Edwin Hawkins, James Cleveland, and Walter Hawkins, learning from the best while refining his own sound. Coley quickly became known for his ability to glide effortlessly between registers, blending traditional gospel passion with jazz-like phrasing. His voice was an instrument of extraordinary flexibility, capable of delivering both thunderous power and tender whispers. His breakout as a solo artist came with the 1986 release of Just Daryl, which included the hit, He's Preparing Me. The album showcased his unique style and established him as a gospel force in his own right. He followed it up with He's Right on Time Live from Los Angeles in 1991, which earned him a Grammy nomination and featured the fan favorite When Sunday Comes. For many gospel listeners, that song remains one of the most iconic expressions of hope and anticipation. Coley's ability to interpret scripture through song gave his music a timeless spiritual weight. When you hear a song like When Sunday Comes, do you feel more inspired by the technical brilliance of Daryl's voice, or by the emotional truth he carried in every note? Throughout the 1990s, Coley continued to release successful projects including Live in Oakland and Oh the Lamb, while also collaborating with gospel greats like Vanessa Bell Armstrong, Shirley Caesar, and the Hawkins family. Beyond gospel, he crossed into jazz and R&B circles, lending his vocals to projects by artists such as Nancy Wilson and Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire. These collaborations highlighted his versatility and proved that gospel could stand proudly alongside any genre without losing its spiritual essence. Coley's career, however, was not without hardship. In the mid-1990s, he was diagnosed with diabetes, a condition that caused serious health complications, including temporary blindness. Despite these struggles, he continued to perform and record using his challenges as testimony in his ministry. His perseverance inspired countless fans who saw him not just as a singer, but as a living witness of faith and resilience. On March 15, 2016, Daryl Coley passed away at the age of 60 after battling complications from diabetes. His death was mourned across the gospel world, with tributes pouring in from artists who regarded him as a mentor and a giant of the genre. Today, his recordings remain some of the most technically impressive and emotionally moving in gospel history. Daryl Coley is remembered not only for his extraordinary vocal skill, but also for his unwavering devotion to using music as a vessel of healing and hope. Reverend Timothy Wright, born on June 17, 1947 in Brooklyn, New York, became affectionately known as the Godfather of Gospel for his bold preaching, anointed songwriting, and exuberant performances that energized congregations across the world. From his earliest years, Wright showed a love for both music and ministry. He began playing piano at age 12, and soon after directed the choir at his home church. By the time he was a teenager, he was already accompanying gospel legends like Reverend Isaac Douglas and singing with groups that traveled across the country. This early exposure set the foundation for a career that combined passionate worship with unforgettable music. In the 1970s, Wright launched the New York Fellowship Mass Choir, a group that embodied his vision of powerful choir singing with a distinctly urban flair. Their dynamic arrangements and spirited performances drew large crowds and captured the energy of New York's thriving black church scene. Wright's breakout moment as a recording artist came in 1994 with the release of Come Thou Almighty King, which earned him his first Grammy nomination. Known for blending traditional gospel with contemporary stylings, Wright's music appealed to both older churchgoers and younger audiences who craved a fresher sound. His best-known song, Jesus, 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 released in 1994, remains one of the most beloved gospel standards of the modern era. The song's simple but powerful repetition of Christ's name struck a chord with millions, becoming a staple in churches across the United States and abroad. Wright's gift was in creating music that was both musically captivating and spiritually uplifting, turning every performance into an atmosphere of revival. His raspy, soulful voice, coupled with his skill as a pianist and arranger, made him one of gospel's most charismatic leaders. When you hear a song like Jesus, 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 do you think its power comes from the simplicity of the lyrics or from the heartfelt way Reverend Wright delivered them beyond music? Wright was also a respected pastor. In 1976, he founded the Grace Tabernacle Christian Center in Brooklyn, where he served as senior pastor until his passing. He often spoke of gospel music not as entertainment, but as ministry, an extension of his preaching. His sermons and songs carried the same fiery conviction, encouraging people to hold fast to their faith despite life's challenges. Many considered him a bridge between the old-school gospel sound of giants like James Cleveland and the contemporary gospel choirs that dominate today. Wright's career earned him multiple Grammy nominations and countless invitations to perform at major gospel events worldwide. He worked alongside some of gospel's greatest artists, including Shirley Caesar, the Hawkins family, and Hezekiah Walker. Despite the acclaim, he remained grounded in his community, using his platform to uplift young musicians and bring resources back to the neighborhoods he served. Tragically, Wright's life was cut short after a devastating car accident in July 2008 that claimed the lives of his wife Betty and their grandson. Wright suffered severe injuries and fought valiantly for nearly a year before passing away on April 24, 2009 at the age of 61. The gospel community mourned deeply, remembering him as a man who gave everything, his voice, his ministry, and his heart to the service of God. Today, Reverend Timothy Wright's songs are still sung in churches across the world, and his legacy as the godfather of gospel lives on. His music remains a testament to the enduring power of faith expressed through song, proving that gospel can be both timeless and ever relevant. Shirley Caesars. Shirley Ann Caesar, born on October 13, 1938 in Durham, North Carolina, is rightfully hailed as the First Lady of Gospel and often celebrated as the Queen of Gospel. With a career spanning more than 6 decades, she has become one of the most enduring voices of faith in the world, earning respect not just for her powerhouse vocals, but also for her tireless ministry. From the time she was a little girl singing in church at age 10, Shirley's path was clear. After the passing of her father when she was just 12, she leaned even more deeply into her faith, using her gift of song as a way to comfort both herself and others. Her big break came in the 1950s when she joined the legendary gospel group The Caravans under Albertina Walker. With her youthful energy and fiery stage presence, Shirley quickly became one of the group's standout performers. Songs like Sweeping Through the City and Choose Ye This Day highlighted her ability to combine vocal agility with heartfelt conviction. Though the Caravans featured many great voices, Shirley's passionate delivery often left audiences electrified. By 1966, she felt the call to strike out on her own, and her solo career soon established her as a powerhouse in gospel. In her solo years, Shirley Caesar became known for blending song with storytelling. She often broke into spoken word sermons, mid-performance weaving messages of hope, repentance, and encouragement into her music. Hits like No Charge, 1975, demonstrated her gift for turning everyday lessons into spiritual testimonies. Her unique style made her concerts feel like revival services, blurring the line between performance and ministry. With over 40 albums to her credit, she built a legacy that continues to shape gospel music. Do you think Shirley Caesar's gift was more in her powerful singing, or in her ability to tell stories that touched people's hearts? Caesar's career achievements are nothing short of extraordinary. She has won 12 Grammy Awards, 14 Stellar Awards, and 18 Dove Awards, making her one of the most decorated artists in gospel history. She was also inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame and honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Awards. Beyond the accolades, she broke barriers for women in gospel, proving that female leaders could thrive in a space often dominated by men. Outside of music, Shirley has been equally influential. She became an ordained pastor and founded Mount Calvary Word of Faith Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, where she continues to serve. Her dual roles as pastor and performer reflect her lifelong belief that gospel is not just a genre, but a calling. She has also been active in philanthropy, supporting programs for the homeless and underprivileged, ensuring her ministry extended far beyond the stage. Even in her later years, Shirley Caesar has remained a vibrant force. Her viral moment in 2016 with the You Name It challenge, taken from her Thanksgiving sermon turned meme, introduced her to a new generation who may not have grown up with gospel, but were instantly captivated by her energy. Unlike many gospel legends we've reflected on, Shirley Caesar is still alive today, continuing to perform and minister well into her 80s. Her life is a living testimony of longevity, faith, and purpose. She stands as proof that gospel music isn't just about songs, it's about a lifetime of service, and Shirley Caesar has given hers fully to God and to the people. Albertina Walker. Albertina Walker, born on August 29, 1929 in Chicago, Illinois, earned the title the Queen of Gospel for her extraordinary leadership, unmatched vocal power, and decades of dedication to the art form. Raised on the south side of Chicago, she grew up surrounded by music and faith, singing in the choir at West Point Baptist Church. From her earliest days, it was clear that her voice carried both the strength and conviction of someone destined to touch lives through gospel. As a teenager, she began performing with gospel pioneer Robert Anderson's group, but her destiny came into full bloom when she formed her own ensemble, the Caravans, in the early 1950s. The Caravans became one of the most influential gospel groups in history. Under Walker's leadership, the group was not only a showcase for her talent, but also a launching pad for many other legends. She had an incredible eye for spotting gifted singers, bringing in talents like Shirley Caesar, Inez Andrews, Dorothy Norwood, and Dolores Washington. Together, they created a sound that combined powerhouse vocals with spirit-filled performances. Songs like Sweeping Through the City and Lord Keep Me Day by Day became anthems in black churches across America. Walker's rich contralto voice anchored the group, but she always allowed space for her protégés to shine, which earned her the nickname Star Maker. What made Albertina Walker unique was her ability to blend ministry with showmanship. The Caravans weren't afraid to bring energy, choreography, and boldness to their performances. While some traditionalists criticized this approach, their style connected deeply with audiences and helped gospel transition into a broader cultural force. Even as gospel evolved, Walker remained a steady figure, keeping the focus on the message of hope and salvation. Do you think Albertina Walker's greatest legacy was her own singing career, or the way she nurtured and launched other gospel legends? By the 1960s, many members of the Caravans had moved on to pursue solo careers, and Walker herself stepped into the spotlight as a solo artist. Her solo hits, including Please Be Patient with Me and I Can Go to God in Prayer, further solidified her place as one of gospel's most beloved voices. She also appeared on national television shows, bringing gospel to mainstream audiences at a time when black religious music was often overlooked. Walker's influence extended well beyond the stage. She was deeply committed to community service and used her platform to raise funds for scholarships, charities, and church initiatives. She also served as a mentor for younger artists, always emphasizing that gospel was more than entertainment, it was ministry. Her humility and generosity made her not only a musical icon, but also a respected spiritual leader. Over her career, Walker recorded more than 60 albums and received countless honors, including a Grammy Award in 1995 for Songs of the Church Live in Memphis. She was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame and received the Stellar Award's Hall of Fame honor, cementing her as one of the greatest figures in gospel history. Albertina Walker passed away on October 8, 2010, at the age of 81 after a long battle with respiratory illness. Her homegoing service was attended by thousands, including gospel giants who had once sung under her guidance. Today, she is remembered as both a towering vocalist and a mother figure of gospel, whose impact continues through the artists she mentored and the songs that remain staples in worship services worldwide. Willie Neal Johnson. Willie Neal Johnson, born on August 25, 1935 in Tyler, Texas, was affectionately known as the country boy of gospel. With his soulful, down-home delivery and heartfelt devotion to ministry, he became one of the most beloved gospel quartet singers of his time. Johnson's roots in gospel music were planted early. Growing up in rural East Texas, he sang in church choirs and community groups, absorbing the traditions of Southern gospel and quartet harmonies. His rich baritone voice carried a warmth and sincerity that would later become his trademark, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already leading songs in local churches. In 1950, at only 15 years old, Johnson founded the Gospel Keynotes, a group that would grow into one of the most successful quartets in gospel history. Their early sound was steeped in traditional quartet style, but Johnson's charisma and leadership pushed them to new heights. By the 1970s, the Gospel Keynotes were recording hit after hit, becoming one of the best-known gospel groups in the country. Their signature songs included Show Me the Way Till I Die and the moving Jesus, You've Been Good to Me. Johnson's down-to-earth stage presence and relatable storytelling connected deeply with audiences, particularly in the South, where his country boy charm resonated with everyday people. What made Johnson so special was his ability to balance humor, humility, and holiness in his performances. He wasn't the type of singer who relied solely on vocal fireworks, though he had plenty of talent. Instead, he sang with conviction, often testifying in the middle of songs about his personal faith journey. Audiences felt like they were not just hearing music, but experiencing worship alongside him. His sincerity kept fans loyal to the Gospel Keynotes for decades. Do you think gospel quartets like the Gospel Keynotes connect so deeply with people because of their tight harmonies, or because of the raw testimony behind their songs? Over the years, Johnson and the Gospel Keynotes earned numerous awards, including a Grammy nomination and several Stellar Awards. In 1980, after the group split, Johnson continued leading a reformed version called Willie Neal Johnson and the New Keynotes. This group carried on the tradition of quartet gospel with fresh energy, keeping the spirit of the original Keynotes alive while appealing to a younger generation. Their live performances were particularly powerful, often stretching into hours of praise and worship, leaving audiences spiritually renewed. Johnson was also known for his mentorship. Many young singers and musicians who passed through his group went on to build their own successful careers. He made sure to remind them that gospel music was not just about fame or money, but about ministry and service to God's people. His influence extended beyond the stage as he frequently participated in church events, revivals, and community programs throughout Texas and beyond. Sadly, Willie Neal Johnson passed away on January 10, 2001, at the age of 65 after suffering a massive stroke. His death was felt deeply across the gospel world, especially in the quartet community, where he had been a cornerstone figure for over half a century. Thousands attended his homegoing service, celebrating the life of a man whose music had uplifted and inspired generations. Today, Johnson's songs are still sung in churches and quartet programs across America, a testament to his enduring influence. Known as the country boy of gospel, he proved that simplicity, sincerity, and a heart for God could touch more lives than the most polished performance ever could. His legacy lives on through the Gospel Keynotes and the countless singers who follow in his footsteps. Frank Williams. Franklin Delano Williams, born on June 27, 1947 in Smithdale, Mississippi, left an indelible mark on gospel as a singer-songwriter and visionary leader. Known for his warm voice and powerful ability to organize choirs, Williams rose from humble Southern roots to become the founder of one of the greatest gospel choirs in history, the Mississippi Mass Choir. His legacy is not only in the songs he sang, but also in the thousands of voices he helped bring together in praise. Williams's early years were steeped in both faith and music. Raised in a devout Christian family, he sang with his siblings as part of the Williams Brothers, a gospel group that would later become legendary in its own right. Alongside his brother Huey Williams, Frank developed his talent for harmony songwriting and stage presence. The Williams Brothers grew into a successful gospel quartet, known for hits like I'm Too Close and Cooling Water. But Frank's vision extended far beyond quartet singing. He dreamed of creating a massive choir that could shake arenas with the power of praise. In 1988, that dream came true with the formation of the Mississippi Mass Choir. Supported by the Malaco Records label in Jackson, Mississippi, Williams gathered singers from across the state to form a 100-member ensemble. Their self-titled debut album, Mississippi Mass Choir, took the gospel world by storm. Featuring the now classic Near the Cross, the album went straight to #1 on the Billboard Gospel chart and stayed there for 45 consecutive weeks. Few debut gospel projects had ever made such an impact, and it cemented Williams's place as a pioneer. What set Frank apart was his leadership style. He wasn't only the choir's lead vocalist, he was its heart. With a commanding yet compassionate presence, he directed the choir in a way that allowed every singer to feel valued while ensuring the ensemble sounded polished and unified. When Williams led a song, his voice carried both strength and tenderness, creating a spiritual atmosphere that drew listeners in and held them spellbound. Do you believe gospel choirs like the Mississippi Mass Choir move people more because of their sheer size and sound, or because of the heartfelt leadership of figures like Frank Williams? Williams guided the choir to further success with their second album, God Gets the Glory, released in 1991. Once again, the choir topped charts, won awards, and toured internationally. Their live performances, often featuring Williams as the lead singer, electrified audiences, blending traditional gospel fervor with a contemporary touch that appealed to young and old alike. Under his leadership, the Mississippi Mass Choir became a household name, standing as one of gospel's most influential institutions. Despite his success, Frank Williams' life was not free from hardship. He battled health issues for much of his career, yet he continued to push himself, determined to see his vision through. Tragically, his journey was cut short when he passed away on March 22, 1993, at just 45 years old after suffering a heart attack. His death shocked the gospel world, as many believed he was only beginning to realize the full scope of his influence. At his funeral, choirs and gospel artists from across the country gathered to pay tribute, singing the very songs he had made famous. The Mississippi Mass Choir continued on, carrying his dream forward, but Frank Williams' absence left a noticeable void. Today, his legacy lives not only in the choir he built, but also in the way he proved that gospel music could unify hundreds of voices into one sound of worship. Reverend Milton Brunson. Reverend Milton Brunson, born on June 28, 1929 in Chicago, Illinois, was one of the most influential pastors and choir leaders in gospel history. Known affectionately as Reverend B, he dedicated his life to ministry through both preaching and music. As the founder of the legendary Thompson Community Singers, better known as the Tommies, Brunson helped shape the modern gospel choir movement. His ability to blend biblical teaching with musical excellence made him a central figure in gospel for more than 4 decades. Brunson grew up in Chicago during a time when gospel music was beginning to take form under pioneers like Thomas A. Dorsey. He was mentored by giants such as Mahalia Jackson, Roberta Martin, and Robert Anderson, learning firsthand what it meant to minister through song. In 1948, at just 19 years old, he founded the Thompson Community Singers at Chicago's Pilgrim Baptist Church, naming the choir after his pastor, Reverend Clarence H. Thompson. What started as a small church group would soon grow into one of the most famous gospel choirs in the world. Under Brunson's direction, the Tommies became known for their tight harmonies, energetic stage presence, and ability to capture the spirit of worship in every performance. They recorded more than 20 albums, producing classics such as There Is No Way, Safe in His Arms, and Perfect Praise, How Excellent. These songs remain staples in gospel worship services to this day. Brunson's genius was not only in directing, but also in identifying and nurturing talent. Many gospel stars, including Darius Brooks, Percy Beatty, and Ricky Dillard, began their careers with the Tommies, crediting Brunson for shaping their musical and spiritual foundation. Do you think gospel choirs like the Tommies became legendary because of their talent, or because of the spiritual guidance of leaders like Reverend Brunson? Beyond music. Brunson was a dedicated pastor. In 1962, he founded the Christ Tabernacle Baptist Church in Chicago, where he served until his passing. His ministry emphasized service to the community, faith in action, and using gospel music as a tool for evangelism. Through both his pulpit and his choir, he reached thousands, proving that the message of the gospel could be amplified through song as much as through preaching. Reverend Brunson also became a respected figure nationally. His choir often performed at gospel conventions, major church events, and on television broadcasts, helping spread the Chicago gospel sound across America. The Tommies earned Grammy Awards, Stellar Awards, and widespread acclaim, solidifying their reputation as one of the greatest gospel choirs ever assembled. Yet despite the accolades, Brunson remained humble, always reminding his singers that their mission was to glorify God, not themselves. After decades of ministry, Reverend Milton Brunson passed away on April 26, 1997, at the age of 67. His death marked the end of an era, but his influence lives on through the countless singers and ministers he inspired. The Tommies continued performing even after his passing, carrying his legacy into the new millennium. To this day, when people think of community choirs that changed gospel forever, the name Reverend Milton Brunson is spoken with reverence. Joe Ligon. Joe Ligon, born on October 11, 1936, in Troy, Alabama, rose to fame as the fiery lead singer of the Mighty Clouds of Joy, one of gospel's most groundbreaking groups. Known for his electrifying stage presence, powerful vocals, and unique blend of traditional gospel with soul and R&B, Ligon helped transform quartet singing into a new sound that reached audiences far beyond the church walls. His rough, raspy tenor became instantly recognizable, and his ability to pour raw emotion into every lyric earned him the reputation of being one of gospel's most unforgettable frontmen. Raised in the Deep South during a time of hardship and segregation, Ligon found comfort and hope in church music. After moving to Los Angeles in his late teens, he connected with other young gospel singers, and in 1959 co-founded the Mighty Clouds of Joy. The group quickly developed a reputation for their polished harmonies and innovative style. Unlike many traditional quartets, the Clouds incorporated instruments like electric guitars and drums, giving their music a modern edge. Their sound was sometimes referred to as the Motown of gospel, and they appealed to younger audiences who might not have otherwise been drawn to church music. Ligon's commanding vocals anchored the group's success. He could shout with the intensity of a preacher, then slide into tender phrasing that melted hearts. Songs like Mighty High Heavy Load and I've Been in the Storm Too Long became gospel staples, while their high-energy live performances set a new standard for quartet groups. The Mighty Clouds were even invited to perform on secular stages, opening for acts like the Rolling Stones, an unheard-of achievement for a gospel group in that era. When you hear a gospel group experiment with R&B or soul influences, do you feel it strengthens the message or risks taking gospel too far outside the church? Over the decades, Joe Ligon and the Mighty Clouds of Joy earned 3 Grammy Awards and released more than 30 albums, cementing their place in gospel history. Their 1974 hit, Mighty High, even crossed over onto the Billboard disco charts, proving that gospel could inspire dance floors as much as sanctuaries. Despite this mainstream recognition, Ligon always insisted that his mission was to spread the message of Jesus. "We don't sing for show," he often said. "We sing to save souls." What set Ligon apart was his passion. On stage, he would often break into spontaneous preaching, moving across the platform with fiery conviction. Audiences described his performances as both concerts and church services, where people laughed, cried, and shouted in response to his spirit-filled delivery. His ability to bridge entertainment and ministry made him one of gospel's most charismatic leaders. Even as he grew older, Ligon refused to slow down. Well into his 70s, he was still touring with the Mighty Clouds, delivering the same fiery energy that had defined his youth. His commitment to gospel music was total, and he remained a beloved figure in the genre until the very end. Joe Ligon passed away on December 11, 2016 at the age of 80. His death marked the end of an era for gospel quartets, but his influence remains alive through recordings, protégés, and the generations of artists who followed his example. Today, his legacy lives on as a reminder that gospel can evolve and expand while still holding fast to its message of faith, hope, and salvation. Rance Allen. Rance Allen, born on November 19, 1948 in Monroe, Michigan, was a gospel innovator whose dynamic voice and groundbreaking style earned him the title, the Prince of Gospel. As the leader of the Rance Allen Group, he redefined what gospel music could sound like, fusing it with soul, R&B, and even rock influences. Known for his astonishing vocal range and signature squalls, Allen's performances captivated audiences for more than 5 decades. He is often credited with paving the way for contemporary gospel, proving that the sacred message could flourish alongside modern sounds without losing its spiritual core. Raised in a deeply religious household, Allen began preaching at the age of 5 and singing in church soon after. Along with his brothers Tom and Steve, he formed the Rance Allen Group in 1969. Their fresh approach to gospel caught the attention of Stax Records, a label known for its soul and R&B acts. Signing to Stax made history, as it was one of the first times a gospel group had been marketed in the same sphere as secular artists. With hits like Ain't No Need of Crying and Something About the Name Jesus, the group blurred the line between church music and popular culture, attracting fans from both worlds. Allen's vocal ability was unmatched. He could move effortlessly from smooth, velvety tones to piercing high screams that electrified audiences. His stage presence was equally unforgettable. He danced, shouted, and poured his entire being into every performance. He once said, "When I sing, I give all of me, because that's what God gave me." His voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. Do you think gospel's power comes more from its lyrics or from the sheer emotional force of voices like Rance Allen's? Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the Rance Allen Group continued to innovate, incorporating funk and contemporary rhythms that appealed to younger listeners. While some traditionalists questioned this bold approach, many embraced it, recognizing that Allen was expanding gospel's reach. His collaborations with Kirk Franklin and other modern gospel artists decades later showed just how influential he was across generations. In fact, Franklin often credited Allen as one of the artists who made his own brand of hip-hop-infused gospel possible. Beyond his music, Allen was also a dedicated pastor. He served as the bishop of the Church of God in Christ for the Michigan Northwestern Harvest jurisdiction, balancing his time between preaching and performing. His ministry was marked by a deep love for people, as he often reminded congregants that gospel music wasn't just for Sunday services, it was for daily encouragement and hope. Allen's contributions earned him numerous awards and honors, including Stellar Awards, a Grammy nomination, and a well-deserved induction into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Yet despite his fame, he remained humble, often saying that his greatest joy came not from accolades, but from knowing his music touched souls. On October 31, 2020, Rance Allen passed away at the age of 71, leaving the gospel world in mourning. His death was sudden, but the outpouring of tributes from fans and fellow artists proved how deeply he had impacted the genre. Today, songs like Miracle Worker and Something About the Name Jesus remain staples in churches and concerts alike, carrying his legacy forward. Rance Allen's life is a testament to the power of innovation, passion, and faith. He broke barriers, inspired generations, and reminded the world that gospel can be both timeless and boundary-pushing. Truly, he was and always will be the Prince of Gospel. Reverend James Moore. Reverend James Moore, born on February 1, 1956 in Detroit, Michigan, was one of gospel music's most beloved singers and preachers, known for his anointed voice and powerful ministry. With a vocal style that combined technical brilliance, raw emotional depth, and a preacher's conviction, he touched audiences around the world. Moore wasn't just a singer. He was a vessel of healing for those who listened, often moving congregations to tears and lifting spirits through his performances. His ability to embody both the joy and the struggle of faith gave him a unique place among gospel's greatest voices. Raised in Detroit, Moore grew up in a city rich with musical tradition. He began singing in church at an early age and quickly became known for his extraordinary gift. After attending the Church of God in Christ, where music was an essential part of worship, Moore realized that his calling was both in ministry and in song. By the time he was in his 20s, he was already traveling nationally, performing in revivals and church conventions where his booming, soul-stirring tenor gained him recognition. In 1982, Moore released his debut album, Brothers and Sisters, I Will Be Praying For You, which introduced the world to his incredible talent. Over the next 2 decades, he released a string of successful projects, including Reverend James Moore Live with the Mississippi Mass Choir 1995, which became one of the best-selling gospel albums of the decade. Songs like God Don't Need No Matches, Joy, and He Was There All the Time remain classics that still resonate in churches today. His ability to fuse traditional gospel with contemporary arrangements gave him broad appeal, while his delivery always felt deeply rooted in worship. When you hear a gospel singer like Reverend James Moore pour such passion into a song, do you think it's the technical skill or the spiritual fire that moves people most? Moore's collaborations with choirs, especially the Mississippi Mass Choir, brought out the best in his artistry. Their live recordings captured the electricity of his preaching-singing style, where he would often break into spoken exhortations in the middle of a song, urging listeners to hold on to their faith. Fans often described his performances as not just concerts, but worship experiences that left them feeling spiritually renewed. Yet behind the powerful voice, Moore also carried heavy burdens. In the 1990s, he was diagnosed with diabetes, which led to severe health complications, including the loss of both legs. Despite these struggles, he continued to minister, showing remarkable resilience. His determination to keep singing even from a wheelchair inspired countless people who saw in him an example of unwavering faith. His testimony reminded audiences that gospel wasn't just music, it was about living through trials and still praising God. Moore's career earned him stellar awards, Grammy nominations, and the admiration of peers across the gospel community. But more importantly, his music left a spiritual impact that extended far beyond accolades. He proved that even in the face of suffering, one's gift could continue to shine and bless others. On June 7, 2000, Reverend James Moore passed away at the age of 44 due to complications from diabetes. His death was a tremendous loss to gospel music, as many believed he had so much more to give. Still, his recordings continue to inspire, offering healing and hope to new generations of listeners. Today, he is remembered as one of gospel's most anointed voices, a man who sang not just with talent, but with his heart and soul fully surrendered to God. Reverend Donald Vails. Reverend Donald Vails, born on December 10, 1952 in Washington, D.C., was a pioneering gospel musician, choir director, and composer who left an indelible mark on the art of gospel choir music. Known for his smooth arrangements and his gift for blending contemporary sounds with traditional gospel fervor, Vails became one of the most respected choir leaders of the late 20th century. His leadership of the Donald Vails Choraleers, and later the Donald Vails Voices of Deliverance, positioned him as a key figure in modern gospel, with his music shaping the worship experience of countless churches across the United States. Vails grew up in a family steeped in faith and music. From an early age, he showed an extraordinary ear for harmony and a natural ability to lead choirs. After studying formally, he brought a unique sophistication to gospel choir arranging, elevating the art form without losing its spiritual heart. His work blended the precision of classical choral training with the improvisational passion of gospel, creating a sound that was both polished and deeply moving. Audiences loved his ability to take a simple hymn and transform it into a majestic worship experience. The Donald Vails Choraleers, formed in the 1970s, quickly became known for their lush harmonies and innovative performances. They recorded a string of albums that became staples in gospel households with songs like He's Mine and I'll See You in the Rapture. Later, his group Voices of Deliverance continued this tradition, producing powerful live recordings that showcased not just musical excellence, but also spiritual anointing. Vails choirs were often described as cathedrals of sound capable of moving an audience from quiet reverence to joyous celebration within a single song. When you hear a massive gospel choir perform, do you think it's the sheer number of voices that makes it powerful, or the spirit and leadership behind it? In addition to his work as a choir director, Vails was also a respected minister. He used his platform to teach that gospel music was not about performance alone, but about ministry and transformation. Many young choir directors studied his techniques, learning how to shape voices into instruments of praise. His influence extended into the classroom and workshop settings where he trained choirs and musicians in the fine art of choral excellence. One of his defining qualities was his openness to contemporary influences. While deeply rooted in tradition, he welcomed new sounds and styles, allowing his choirs to appeal to younger generations. His approach helped gospel music remain vibrant and relevant, ensuring its continued growth in the modern era. He believed gospel had to evolve without losing its spiritual integrity, and his body of work demonstrated that balance beautifully. Tragically, Donald Vails' life was cut short. He passed away on October 10, 1997 at just 44 years old due to complications from AIDS. His death was a devastating blow to the gospel community, which not only lost a master musician, but also a mentor and visionary. At his homegoing service, choirs from across the nation lifted their voices in tribute, honoring a man who had dedicated his life to the ministry of music. Today, Reverend Donald Vails is remembered as one of gospel's great architects of sound. His recordings remain timeless, and his influence lives on in choirs across the world. Every time a gospel choir soars in harmony, his fingerprints can be felt, reminding us of the power of voices joined together in faith. Olanda Draper. Olanda Draper, born on September 29, 1963 in Alabama, became one of gospel's most dynamic and electrifying choir directors, earning the nickname Choir Master Extraordinaire. His group, Olanda Draper and the Associates, revolutionized gospel choir performance in the 1980s and 1990s with their high-energy style, innovative arrangements, and spirit-filled delivery. Draper's passion, creativity, and charisma left an unforgettable imprint on gospel music, even though his life was tragically cut short. Raised in a deeply religious household, Draper showed early signs of musical genius. By the time he was a teenager, he was already leading choirs in his local church, demonstrating an uncanny ability to bring out the best in singers. He studied at Memphis State University and soon began to attract attention for his bold, energetic directing style. Unlike more traditional choir directors, Draper treated every performance like a full-body experience, leaping, clapping, and shouting with the same intensity as the singers behind him. This sense of unrestrained worship inspired his choirs and audiences alike. In 1986, Draper formed the Associates, a choir made up of some of the most talented singers from Memphis and beyond. Their debut album, Do It Again, released in 1989, announced Draper as a fresh force in gospel. Over the next decade, albums like Live, A Celebration of Praise, and Above and Beyond earned Grammy nominations and stellar awards, propelling Draper and his choir to national prominence. Their performances were legendary for combining technical excellence with explosive energy, proving that gospel could be both polished and electrifying. When you watch a gospel choir perform with so much fire and movement, Do you feel more connected to the music because of the sound itself or the passion you see in their performance? Draper's impact was not limited to the choir stand. He collaborated with gospel greats such as Shirley Caesar, Albertina Walker, and Kirk Franklin, and his influence on Franklin's energetic choir style is widely acknowledged. Secular artists also took notice. Stevie Wonder and Billy Joel were among those who admired his arrangements. Draper was respected for his ability to keep gospel rooted in tradition while pushing it toward new horizons, inspiring a younger generation of choir leaders to think outside the box. Beyond music, Draper was a devoted minister. He used his platform to preach faith, unity, and perseverance, often reminding his singers that choir ministry was more than entertainment, it was evangelism. Many young singers who passed through the Associates credited Draper with shaping not only their musical careers, but also their spiritual lives. His rehearsals often felt like revival services, with prayer teaching and encouragement at the center of the work. Tragically, Draper's life ended far too soon. On July 21, 1998, he passed away at the age of just 34 from kidney failure. His sudden death shocked the gospel world as many believed he was still in the prime of his creativity. Thousands attended his home-going celebration in Memphis, where choirs from across the nation lifted their voices in his honor, proving that his impact was immeasurable. Even in his brief career, Orlando Draper changed the face of gospel choir music. Today, his recordings continue to inspire worship, and his influence can be seen in nearly every modern gospel choir. His legacy lives on as the choir master extraordinaire, a man who showed the world that gospel could be both a disciplined art form and an outpouring of uncontainable joy. Thomas Whitfield. Thomas Whitfield, born on November 30, 1954 in Detroit, Michigan, was a gifted composer, arranger, producer, and singer whose innovations earned him the title the Maestro of Gospel. Known for his ability to blend traditional gospel roots with contemporary sophistication, Whitfield transformed the sound of modern gospel music during the 1970s and 1980s. His keen sense of harmony, his unique keyboard work, and his mastery of choral arrangements made him one of the most influential gospel musicians of his time. Raised in the rich musical environment of Detroit, Whitfield was exposed to both the sacred sounds of church choirs and the Motown influence that dominated the city. By the time he was a teenager, he was already recognized as a prodigy on the piano and organ. After studying music formally at Wayne State University, he began to apply his technical skills to gospel music in ways that no one had before. His arrangements introduced jazz chords, classical structures, and lush harmonies into gospel, giving the genre a refined modern edge while maintaining its spiritual intensity. In the early 1970s, Whitfield founded the Thomas Whitfield Company, a choir that became a platform for his innovative ideas. Together, they released groundbreaking albums like Hallelujah, Anyhow, and This Time, which showcased his unmatched skill as an arranger. He also became a sought-after producer, working with legends such as Vanessa Bell Armstrong, Yolanda Adams, and Shirley Caesar. Whitfield had a gift for taking a raw vocal talent and surrounding it with arrangements that magnified its power. Songs like I'm Encouraged and Precious, Jesus continue to inspire worshipers around the world decades after their release. When you hear gospel music that incorporates jazz and classical elements, do you feel it enhances the worship experience, or do you prefer the raw, traditional sound of gospel? Whitfield's artistry extended beyond choir and solo work. He was an exceptional instrumentalist, known for his sensitive piano accompaniments that could shift from gentle and reflective to thunderous and triumphant. His reputation for excellence earned him the respect of both gospel and secular musicians. Many considered him a bridge between the church and the conservatory, proving that gospel music could be as musically sophisticated as any other genre. Despite his incredible talent, Whitfield's career was not without challenges. He struggled at times to gain mainstream recognition outside of the gospel community, as his music often defied categorization. Yet within gospel circles, he was revered as a genius whose work raised the bar for everyone else. He was nominated for Grammy Awards and received stellar awards, but his true reward was hearing his music sung in churches everywhere. His compositions were more than songs, they were sermons in melody, teaching faith, perseverance, and hope. Tragically, Thomas Whitfield's life was cut short when he passed away on June 20, 1992, at just 37 years old, due to a heart attack. His untimely death stunned the gospel community, which mourned the loss of a visionary whose best years still seemed ahead. At his homegoing celebration, gospel luminaries gathered to honor the man whose music had elevated the art form to new heights. Today, Whitfield's legacy endures in every gospel arrangement that dares to push boundaries while keeping the message intact. He proved that gospel could be simultaneously sacred and sophisticated, raw and refined. Known forever as the maestro of gospel, his contributions remain a foundation for modern gospel musicians who continue to build on the path he created. Charles Fold. Charles Fold, born on June 4, 1934 in Cincinnati, Ohio, was a pioneering gospel singer, choir director, and arranger who became one of the most respected leaders in gospel music history. Best known for his long partnership with the king of gospel, Reverend James Cleveland Fold, helped shape the sound of modern gospel choirs with his precision, creativity, and devotion to ministry. His artistry earned him multiple Grammy Awards and left a lasting impact on choirs across the United States. Fold's love for music began in his youth when he sang in church choirs and played piano for local congregations in Cincinnati. By his teenage years, it was clear he had a natural ability to direct with an ear for harmony and an eye for detail. After attending the University of Cincinnati, he formally studied music while continuing to immerse himself in church choirs. His deep knowledge of both classical training and gospel tradition allowed him to arrange music that was both polished and spirit-filled. In the 1960s, Fold began working closely with Reverend James Cleveland, a partnership that would define much of his career. He served as choir director and arranger for Cleveland's James Cleveland Gospel Music Workshop of America, GMWA, helping to bring structure and excellence to its performances. Later, Fold formed his own group, the Charles Fold Singers, whose recordings became highly influential. Their rendition of Everything Will Be All Right and God Has Smiled on Me showcased Fold's gift for blending emotional power with musical sophistication. When you hear a well-trained gospel choir, do you find yourself more moved by the discipline of their harmony or the passion in their voices? One of Fold's crowning achievements came in 1979 with the release of Live at Carnegie Hall with James Cleveland and the Charles Fold Singers. This groundbreaking performance brought gospel music to one of the most prestigious stages in the world, helping to elevate the genre's status in mainstream music. The album won a Grammy Award, one of several Fold would earn throughout his career. His work proved that gospel choirs could stand shoulder to shoulder with the finest musical ensembles anywhere. Fold also became a respected leader in the GMWA, where he mentored countless young choir directors and singers. Known for his calm demeanor and gentlemanly style, he was deeply admired not just for his talent, but also for his humility and generosity. Many aspiring musicians looked to him as both a teacher and a spiritual guide, someone who understood that gospel music was ministry first and performance second. Over the course of his career, Charles Fold and his choirs recorded numerous albums, traveled internationally, and left an indelible mark on gospel music. His arrangements often featured intricate harmonies and innovative structures, but always with the goal of drawing audiences into worship. He believed excellence in music was a way of honoring God, and he demanded that same excellence from everyone he trained. Charles Fold passed away on April 7, 2006, at the age of 71. His funeral in Cincinnati was a massive celebration of his life, attended by gospel luminaries and community members alike. Choirs from across the nation sang in tribute, honoring the man who had devoted his life to the ministry of music. Today, Charles Fold is remembered as a pioneer of the gospel choir movement, a man who balanced artistry with humility, discipline with devotion. His recordings remain classics, and his influence continues through the generations of choir directors and singers he inspired. Truly, he was the gentleman of gospel choirs. Keith Wonderboy Johnson. Keith Wonderboy Johnson, born on May 17, 1972 in Brooklyn, New York, was one of gospel music's brightest modern stars, celebrated for revitalizing the traditional quartet style and carrying it into the 21st century. Nicknamed Wonderboy as a child because of his prodigious vocal talent, Johnson grew up in a home where gospel was both a passion and a way of life. His father, Philip Johnson, was a member of the spiritual quartet group, the Spiritual Voices, and Keith quickly followed in those footsteps, developing the charisma and vocal fire that would later make him a household name in gospel circles. By the mid-1990s, Johnson had officially formed his own group, Keith Wonderboy Johnson and the Spiritual Voices. Their music captured the classic sound of gospel quartets while infusing it with youthful energy and a contemporary edge. His 1998 debut album, Through the Storm, was an instant success, showcasing Johnson's raw vocals and the tight harmonies of his group. Songs like Hide Behind the Mountain and Be Right resonated deeply with both older fans who cherished quartet traditions and younger audiences who were discovering this style for the first time. Johnson's ability to bridge generations earned him a unique place in gospel. What set Wonderboy apart was his intensity. On stage, he was a ball of energy, often leaping, shouting, and testifying as if every performance was his last. His nickname became more than a childhood label. It perfectly described his larger-than-life presence. Audiences adored the way he poured his soul into every note, never holding back his passion or his faith. His concerts often felt like full-blown church services where people laughed, cried, and worshiped together under the power of his voice. Do you think Keith Wonderboy Johnson's greatest strength was keeping quartet gospel alive for a new generation? Or in the way he made it feel brand new to younger listeners? Over the course of his career, Johnson released more than a dozen albums and scored multiple hits that became modern quartet standards. Songs like I've Got a Feeling and Send a Revival kept his music in heavy rotation on gospel radio stations, while his live performances made him a fixture at gospel festivals and church events across the country. He earned Stellar Award nominations and became one of the most recognized voices of his era. Beyond his music, Johnson was committed to ministry. He saw himself as not just an entertainer, but as a messenger, someone chosen to carry the gospel through song. He often spoke about how quartet music was the foundation of gospel and how it deserved to be preserved for future generations. His passion for history and tradition made him a mentor to younger artists, many of whom credited him with inspiring their own journeys. Tragically, Keith Wonderboy Johnson passed away suddenly on September 30, 2022 at the age of 50, reportedly from a heart attack. His unexpected death sent shockwaves through the gospel community as he was still actively recording and performing. Fans and peers alike mourned the loss of a man who had dedicated his entire life to spreading the message of Christ through quartet gospel. Today, Johnson is remembered as a modern torchbearer who ensured that the rich traditions of quartet singing did not fade away. His legacy lives on through the countless lives he touched with his music, his boundless energy, and his unwavering faith. For many, Keith Wonderboy Johnson will always be the voice that proved gospel's old-school power could still light up the modern world. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, born on March 20, 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, was not only a gospel pioneer, but also one of the most influential musicians in American history. Known as the godmother of rock and roll, she was among the first artists to blend gospel themes with the rhythmic drive of electric guitar, creating a style that laid the foundation for rock, R&B, and soul. With her dazzling musicianship and charismatic stage presence, she broke barriers for women, for gospel, and for Black artists at a time when opportunities were scarce. Raised in a deeply religious household, Rosetta was introduced to music by her mother, who was also a traveling evangelist with the Church of God in Christ. At just 4 years old, Rosetta was already performing publicly, astounding church audiences with her ability to sing and play guitar. By the 1930s, she had moved to Chicago, where she became a rising star in the gospel circuit. But unlike most gospel singers of her time, Rosetta wasn't content to stay confined within the walls of the church. She brought gospel to nightclubs, concert halls, and radio, often sparking controversy among church leaders, but winning the hearts of mainstream audiences. Her breakthrough came in 1938 when she recorded "Rock Me and This Train" for Decca Records. These songs showcased her fiery guitar skills and bold fusion of gospel lyrics with a bluesy swing. She was one of the first gospel artists to achieve widespread commercial success, touring extensively and performing with jazz and blues greats like Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington. Rosetta's guitar playing was revolutionary. She was among the earliest musicians to use heavy distortion and rhythmic strumming patterns that would later inspire rock icons such as Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Little Richard. Do you think Sister Rosetta Tharpe deserves more recognition as a rock and roll founder, or should her legacy remain rooted mainly in gospel? Despite her success, Tharpe often faced criticism from religious communities who disapproved of her mixing sacred music with secular venues. But she insisted that her mission was to spread the message of God to as many people as possible, no matter the stage. She also pushed gender boundaries in a male-dominated industry, wielding her electric guitar with authority and proving that women could be just as powerful and groundbreaking in music as men. Her performances, often filled with joy, improvisation, and showmanship, captivated audiences across racial and cultural divides. One of her most famous moments came in 1964 when she performed at a concert in an abandoned railway station in Manchester, England. Standing in the rain with her electric guitar, she delivered blistering renditions of gospel songs to a captivated European audience. That performance, now legendary, solidified her influence on the British rock musicians who were about to take over the world stage. Sister Rosetta Tharpe continued to perform through the 1960s and early 1970s, though health problems, including diabetes and the amputation of a leg, slowed her down. On October 9, 1973, she passed away at the age of 58 after suffering a stroke. Her funeral was attended by fans and fellow musicians who recognized her as a trailblazer who had changed the course of music history. Today, Sister Rosetta Tharpe's legacy is finally receiving the recognition it deserves. She was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018, decades after her innovations had already shaped popular music. Known for her fearless artistry, her unapologetic faith, and her groundbreaking guitar work, she remains a symbol of what happens when gospel collides with genius. She wasn't just a singer or guitarist, she was a movement. Marion Williams. Marion Williams, born on August 29, 1927 in Miami, Florida, is often hailed as one of the greatest gospel singers of all time. With a voice that could shift from a delicate whisper to a thunderous wail in a single phrase, she brought an unmatched emotional depth to gospel music. Williams was not only a master vocalist, but also an innovator whose style influenced everyone from gospel peers to pop and soul icons. Her ability to stretch the boundaries of gospel without ever losing its spiritual fire earned her the reputation as one of the most commanding performers of the 20th century. Growing up in a poor household during the Great Depression, Marion's early life was steeped in hardship. Her family was deeply religious, and church quickly became her sanctuary. By her teens, Williams was already recognized for her stunning vocal gift. At just 22, she joined the Ward Singers, led by gospel legend Clara Ward. With them, she rose to prominence in the late 1940s and 1950s, contributing to hits like "Surely God is Able." But it was her ability to take a traditional hymn and infuse it with dramatic runs, swooping falsettos, and soul-drenched emotion that truly set her apart. Audiences described her singing as otherworldly, often leaving listeners in tears or shouting in the aisles. In 1958, Williams left the Ward Singers to form the Stars of Faith, a group that carried her innovative approach into a new era. While gospel quartets and ensembles were typically polished and restrained, Williams performed with unbridled energy. She wasn't afraid to experiment with rhythm and improvisation, paving the way for the expressive styles that would later dominate gospel R&B and even rock. Legends such as Aretha Franklin, Little Richard, and Sam Cooke all cited Williams as a major influence, with Aretha calling her the greatest gospel singer in the world. When you hear a gospel singer improvise and pour raw emotion into a performance, do you feel it brings you closer to the Spirit? Or do you prefer the discipline of a more traditional style? Williams' career was also notable for her crossover appeal. She performed at Carnegie Hall, toured internationally, and brought gospel to audiences that had never before experienced its power. Her rendition of "Packin' Up" remains one of the most electrifying live gospel performances ever recorded, showcasing her ability to turn a simple song into a spiritual explosion. Despite achieving fame, Williams never abandoned her roots in the church. She continued to see gospel not as entertainment, but as ministry, reminding fans that every note she sang was an offering of faith. Her contributions earned her numerous honors, including induction into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and in 1993, a Kennedy Center honor, the highest cultural award in the United States. That same year, she was also awarded the MacArthur Genius Fellowship, making her one of the few gospel artists to receive such recognition. Marion Williams passed away on July 2, 1994, at the age of 66, leaving behind a towering legacy. She is remembered not only as a vocal powerhouse, but also as a trailblazer who shaped the sound of modern gospel and beyond. Every time a gospel or soul singer takes a vocal risk or pushes the boundaries of expression, they walk in the footsteps of Marion Williams, the woman whose voice redefined what gospel could be. Alex Bradford. Alex Bradford, born on January 23, 1927 in Bessemer, Alabama, was one of gospel music's most charismatic and theatrical performers. Known for his electrifying stage presence, innovative songwriting, and ability to blend gospel fervor with show-stopping drama, Bradford helped expand the reach of gospel far beyond the church. A true pioneer, he influenced not only gospel legends but also secular artists like Little Richard Ray Charles, and even rock musicians who borrowed from his dynamic style. Bradford's journey in music began early. By the age of 4, he was already singing in church, and at 14, he was directing his first choir. His talent and bold personality set him apart from his peers. After moving to Chicago in the 1940s, he became part of the thriving gospel scene, which included greats such as Mahalia Jackson and Thomas A. Dorsey. Bradford's voice was extraordinary. He could leap from a smooth tenor to a shrill falsetto in an instant, a technique that would later inspire the wild vocal stylings of Little Richard. In the early 1950s, Bradford formed the Bradford Singers, a group that reflected his vision of gospel as both ministry and performance. Later, with the Bradford Specials, he created some of the most enduring gospel hits of the era. His 1954 recording, Too Close to Heaven, often called I'm Too Close, sold over 1 million copies, a staggering achievement for a gospel record at the time. The song's success proved that gospel could rival popular music in commercial appeal while staying true to its spiritual message. Bradford was also a gifted songwriter. He penned classics such as Let the Lord Be Seen in Me and Climbing Up the Mountain, songs that remain staples in churches even today. His compositions often carried simple, singable melodies paired with powerful lyrics, making them accessible to congregations while still musically exciting for performers. Do you think gospel's power to influence genres like rock and R&B shows its universal strength? Or does it risk losing its sacred roots when borrowed by secular artists? What set Bradford apart most, however, was his theatricality. He brought a showman's flair to gospel performances, using dramatic gestures, expressive storytelling, and call and response techniques that turned concerts into full-scale worship experiences. Critics sometimes accused him of being too flamboyant for the church, but audiences adored him. His willingness to break tradition paved the way for future artists like James Cleveland and Andraé Crouch, who carried gospel into new creative spaces. Bradford also made history on Broadway. In 1961, he joined the cast of the hit musical Black Nativity, written by Langston Hughes. His performance brought gospel music to mainstream theater audiences, proving its dramatic and artistic potential outside church walls. Later, he toured internationally with gospel musicals, spreading the sound of gospel to Europe and Africa, where it deeply influenced local music traditions. Tragically, Alex Bradford's life was cut short when he passed away on February 15, 1978, at the age of 51 after suffering a stroke. His death robbed gospel of one of its boldest innovators. Yet his influence lived on through the countless artists he inspired and the way he expanded the very idea of what gospel could be. Today, Alex Bradford is remembered as a trailblazer whose fearless artistry bridged sacred and secular church and stage America and the world. His music and performance style remind us that gospel is not just about tradition, it is about passion, creativity, and the courage to let faith shine in every arena. Cleophas Robinson. Cleophas Robinson, born on March 18, 1932 in Canton, Mississippi, became one of gospel's most celebrated voices and earned the nickname the Singing Preacher. His booming baritone, unmatched ability to interpret scripture through song and dedication to ministry made him a beloved figure in both the church and the recording studio. For more than 4 decades, Robinson touched lives across America with his stirring performances, often turning concerts into full-blown revival services. Robinson's musical journey began in the church where he was immersed in gospel from childhood. After moving to St. Louis, Missouri as a teenager, he quickly established himself as one of the most powerful voices in the region's thriving gospel scene. By his early 20s, he was recording with local labels and gaining recognition for his commanding style. His breakthrough came in the 1950s and 1960s when he began recording for Peacock Records, the legendary gospel label that also featured giants like the Mighty Clouds of Joy and the 5 Blind Boys of Alabama. One of Robinson's signature songs, Wrapped Up, Tied Up, Tangled Up in Jesus, showcased his ability to combine deep vocal resonance with pure joy and conviction. Unlike many gospel singers of his era, Robinson often infused preaching into his performances, moving seamlessly between spoken exhortations and soaring vocal runs. This preacher-singer style would later inspire artists such as Reverend James Moore and Rance Allen. Robinson's concerts were not just musical events, they were spiritual encounters that left audiences transformed. By the late 1960s and 1970s, Robinson had become a national star. He recorded hit after hit, including What More Do You Want Him to Do and Since Jesus Came Into My Life. His records consistently sold well, and he became a regular guest on gospel television and radio programs. His reputation earned him international invitations, taking his ministry overseas and introducing gospel's message to audiences around the world. When you hear a gospel singer who mixes preaching into their songs, do you feel it makes the performance more powerful, or do you prefer a straightforward musical style? Robinson was not only a performer but also a pastor. He founded the Greater Bethlehem Baptist Church in St. Louis, where he ministered for decades while continuing his singing career. His dual roles allowed him to touch people in multiple ways through weekly sermons, personal ministry, and his recordings. His church became a hub of gospel music and faith, drawing people from across the city who wanted to experience his unique blend of preaching and singing. Over the course of his career, Robinson released dozens of albums and earned numerous accolades, including Stellar Awards and recognition from gospel organizations nationwide. He worked with nearly every major gospel artist of his era, building a legacy of collaboration and community. His rich, resonant voice was often compared to that of a preacher giving a Sunday morning sermon filled with both authority and compassion. Sadly, Cleophas Robinson passed away on July 2, 1998, at the age of 66. His death marked the loss of one of gospel's most commanding voices. Yet his influence continues to echo in the work of preachers and singers who followed his path. To this day, when gospel fans recall the singing preacher, they think of Robinson's powerful delivery, his fiery conviction, and his ability to make the word come alive through music. Robinson's legacy is that of a man who bridged pulpit and stage sermon and song, showing the world that gospel is not just about melody, it is about ministry. Reverend F.C. Barnes, Reverend Faircloth, F.C. Barnes, born on June 22, 1929 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, was a beloved pastor-singer and songwriter who became an unlikely gospel star later in life. Best known for his timeless hit, Rough Side of the Mountain, Barnes brought a simple yet profound sincerity to his music that resonated deeply with everyday believers. His warm baritone and humble spirit proved that gospel didn't always need big choirs or complex arrangements. Sometimes heartfelt testimony was more than enough to change lives. Barnes's musical roots began in the church. He was ordained as a minister in the 1950s and spent decades pastoring at Redbud Holy Church in Rocky Mount. For most of his life, his focus was on preaching and serving his community, not pursuing a music career. He sang in church services and local programs, but it wasn't until the early 1980s that he unexpectedly found himself in the national spotlight. In 1983, Barnes teamed up with Rev. Janice Brown to record Rough Side of the Mountain. The song, a simple duet with piano and organ accompaniment, captured the struggles and perseverance of the Christian walk. Against all odds, the record became one of the best-selling gospel albums of the decade, topping charts and selling over 500,000 copies. For a pastor who had never sought fame, Barnes suddenly became a household name in gospel circles. His down-to-earth delivery and relatable lyrics struck a chord with listeners who saw their own struggles mirrored in his music. The success of Rough Side of the Mountain led to more recordings, including I'm Still Holding On and I'm Coming Up on the Rough Side. Each carried the same theme of perseverance through hardship, reminding audiences that faith was not about avoiding challenges, but enduring them with God's help. Barnes's style was never flashy or theatrical. He sang with the steady assurance of a pastor comforting his flock. When you listen to a song like Rough Side of the Mountain, do you think its power lies in the simplicity of the music or in the authenticity of Reverend Barnes's heartfelt delivery? While Barnes achieved national recognition, he never stopped being a pastor. He continued preaching weekly, mentoring younger ministers, and leading his congregation in Rocky Mount. His music career never pulled him away from his first calling. If anything, it expanded his ministry by giving him a broader platform to share the gospel. Fans admired him not just as a singer, but as a shepherd who lived what he preached. Over the years, Barnes recorded more albums, often in collaboration with choirs or fellow ministers, but Rough Side of the Mountain remained his defining work. He received numerous honors for his contributions to gospel, including recognition from the Stellar Awards and appreciation from church organizations across the South. On July 11, 2011, Reverend F.C. Barnes passed away at the age of 82, leaving behind a legacy rooted in faith, humility, and service. His funeral was filled with music as choirs and singers paid tribute to the man whose voice had carried them through difficult times. Today, Reverend Barnes is remembered as proof that gospel stardom doesn't require fame or ambition. It only requires sincerity, faith, and a willingness to share one's testimony. His songs continue to be sung in churches, comforting and encouraging believers who are climbing their own rough side of the mountain. Bishop G.E. Patterson. Gilbert Earl G.E. Patterson, born on September 22, 1939 in Humboldt, Tennessee, was one of the most beloved leaders in the Church of God in Christ, COGIC, and a preacher whose voice carried the dual power of pulpit and song. Best known as the presiding bishop of COGIC, the largest Pentecostal denomination in the United States, Patterson was also deeply connected to gospel music. His recordings, often blending his booming preaching style with old-time hymns and traditional gospel songs, became treasures for believers seeking encouragement, comfort, and inspiration. Raised in a strong church family, Patterson was the son of Bishop W.A. Patterson and nephew of Bishop J.O. Patterson Sr., both prominent COGIC leaders. From an early age, he was surrounded by worship and quickly developed a love for both preaching and singing. He began preaching at the age of 17, demonstrating a rare gift for oratory. But beyond the pulpit, Patterson always found strength in gospel music, particularly the hymns and spirituals that had sustained the Black church for generations. In 1975, Patterson founded Temple of Deliverance Church of God in Christ in Memphis, Tennessee. Under his leadership, the church grew rapidly, eventually becoming one of the largest congregations in the city with membership numbering in the thousands. His preaching style, fervent scriptural, and always laced with song, set him apart. Patterson often sang portions of his sermons breaking into hymns like, "Yes, God is Real," or "I'm a Soldier in the Army of the Lord," bringing his congregation into a wave of worship that blurred the line between preaching and music. In the 1990s and 2000s, Patterson's sermons began to be recorded and widely distributed on VHS DVD and later online. These recordings often included his singing, which became just as beloved as his preaching. Albums such as Singing the Old Time Way and Singing the Old Songs showcased his ability to revive traditional hymns with heartfelt conviction. For many listeners, hearing Bishop Patterson sing was like stepping back into an old-fashioned revival meeting. When you hear a preacher break into song during a sermon, do you feel it makes the message more powerful, or do you prefer the sermon and music to remain separate? As presiding Bishop of Kojak from 2000 until his passing, Patterson emphasized holiness, unity, and a return to spiritual roots. His sermons reached millions through television broadcasts and gospel recordings, making him one of the most recognizable voices in modern Pentecostalism. Unlike many contemporary leaders who leaned heavily on modern gospel, Patterson intentionally preserved the old hymns, believing they carried timeless truths that still spoke powerfully to new generations. His contributions to gospel music were recognized widely. Though not a traditional recording artist in the commercial sense, his albums sold remarkably well among churchgoers who treasured the authenticity of his singing. His voice, sometimes smooth and tender, other times rough with passion, embodied the spirit of a pastor who lived what he sang. Sadly, Bishop G.E. Patterson passed away on March 20th, 2007, at the age of 67 after battling cancer. His funeral in Memphis drew thousands, including church leaders, gospel artists, and ordinary worshipers whose lives had been touched by his ministry. Today, Patterson is remembered not only as a great bishop, but also as a singer-preacher who embodied the marriage of sermon and song. His recordings remain staples in homes and churches, keeping alive the traditional hymns and spirituals that defined the Black church experience. Bishop G.E. Patterson's legacy is proof that sometimes the most powerful gospel comes not from the choir stand, but from the pulpit itself. Reverend Paul S. Morton Sr. Reverend Paul Sylvester Morton Sr., born on July 30, 1950, in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, became one of the most influential pastor-singers in modern gospel, known worldwide for his anointed preaching and iconic worship anthem, "Let It Rain." The son of American parents who were deeply rooted in the church, Morton was raised in the Pentecostal tradition where worship and music were inseparable. He grew up watching his father, Bishop C.L. Morton, and his mother, Evangelist Matilda Morton, lead congregations with fiery conviction. From those beginnings, he developed a love for both the pulpit and the choir stand, ultimately becoming a rare figure who thrived in both. Morton moved to New Orleans in the early 1970s, where he accepted the call to ministry and began serving at Greater St. Stephen Missionary Baptist Church. Under his leadership, the church grew exponentially, becoming one of the largest congregations in the region. Morton's ministry style reflected his unique blend of preacher and worship leader. He could deliver a soul-stirring sermon and then immediately break into song, creating worship experiences that swept across denominational lines. His ability to merge pastoral authority with gospel artistry made him a beloved figure far beyond his local congregation. As a gospel artist, Morton reached international acclaim with the release of Let It Rain in 2003. The song became an instant classic sung in churches across the globe. Its simple refrain, "Open the floodgates of heaven, let it rain," captured the universal longing for spiritual renewal. But Morton's recording career stretched far beyond this single hit. He released numerous albums, including Crescent City Fire and Best Days Yet, which showcased his gift for writing and delivering songs that were both deeply personal and universally relatable. His warm tenor voice carried an intimacy that made listeners feel as though he was singing directly to them. When you hear a pastor like Reverend Paul S. Morton step from the pulpit to sing a worship song, do you feel it adds more depth to the message, or do you prefer preaching and singing to remain separate? Morton was also a visionary leader in church organization. In 1994, he founded the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International, a movement that sought to bridge Baptist tradition with Pentecostal spirituality. The fellowship grew rapidly, spreading across the United States and internationally, giving pastors and congregations a new framework for worship that emphasized both biblical teaching and the gifts of the Spirit. Under his leadership, Full Gospel became one of the most influential Christian movements of the late 20th century. Though widely admired, Morton's journey was not without struggle. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, his church in New Orleans was devastated, and he was forced to relocate part of his ministry to Atlanta, Georgia. Despite this setback, Morton continued to lead, rebuild, and inspire, demonstrating resilience and faith under fire. His transparency about personal trials, including moments of discouragement, endeared him even more to followers who saw him not only as a leader, but also as a man who trusted God through hardship. Today, Reverend Paul S. Morton Sr. is remembered as one of gospel's great pastor artists. He officially retired from pastoring in 2018, passing leadership of Changing a Generation Church in Atlanta to his son Joseph P.J. Morton, a Grammy-winning R&B and gospel artist in his own right. While he has stepped back from day-to-day pastoral duties, his music and sermons continue to inspire millions. Reverend Morton is living proof that gospel music and preaching can exist in perfect harmony. His voice, whether spoken or sung, remains a beacon of faith, calling people to deeper worship and greater trust in God. Margaret Allison. Margaret Allison, born on September 25, 1921, in McCormick, South Carolina, became a gospel pioneer as the founder and lead singer of the legendary Angelic Gospel Singers. Known for her rich alto voice, her tireless dedication, and her ability to lead a group that remained active for more than 6 decades, Allison carved out a place as one of the most enduring figures in gospel history. Her contribution wasn't just in her own singing, but also in her ability to organize, mentor, and guide one of the longest-running female gospel groups of all time. Raised in a deeply religious family, Allison grew up singing in the church. Her natural gift for music was evident from childhood, and by her teens, she was already serving as a choir director. In 1944, after moving to Philadelphia, she and her sister Josephine McDowell, along with 2 friends, founded the Angelic Gospel Singers. Their mission was simple: to spread the message of the gospel through song. With Allison as the lead voice and guiding force, the group quickly gained recognition for their heartfelt harmonies and spirit-filled delivery. Their breakout moment came in 1949 with the recording of "Touch Me, Lord Jesus." The song became an instant hit, selling thousands of copies and cementing the Angelic Gospel Singers as one of gospel's premier ensembles. Unlike some groups that faded after a single success, the Angelics, anchored by Allison's leadership, continued to thrive for decades. They recorded numerous albums, toured nationally and internationally, and became household names within the gospel community. Allison's distinctive alto gave their sound a warm, soulful edge that set them apart from other groups of the era. As leader, Allison was not only the musical anchor, but also the spiritual guide of the group. She insisted that their music remain grounded in biblical truth and heartfelt testimony. Her songs often reflected her own walk of faith, carrying themes of perseverance, redemption, and hope. Even as gospel music evolved through the years, moving from traditional quartet styles to contemporary arrangements, the Angelic Gospel Singers remained true to their roots, thanks to Allison's steady hand. When you hear long-lasting groups like the Angelic Gospel Singers, do you think their legacy endures more because of their timeless songs or because of the leadership that kept them together? Throughout her career, Allison mentored countless young singers who passed through the Angelic Gospel Singers. Many credited her with teaching them not only how to perform, but also how to carry themselves with grace, discipline, and humility. She believed gospel was more than music, it was ministry, and she expected her singers to live the message they proclaimed. Her commitment to excellence kept the group relevant, even as new generations of gospel artists emerged. Allison's contributions were recognized with numerous honors. The group was inducted into the International Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and Allison herself was celebrated as a matriarch of gospel. Even into her later years, she continued to sing with the angelic gospel singers, proving her voice and spirit were as strong as ever. On July 30th, 2008, Margaret Allison passed away at the age of 86. Her funeral was filled with gospel luminaries and admirers who came to honor a woman whose life had been wholly dedicated to the service of God through song. Though she is gone, her legacy lives on every time "Touch Me, Lord Jesus" or any of her beloved songs are sung in churches. Today, Margaret Allison is remembered not just as the leader of a great group, but as a trailblazer who showed what it means to devote an entire lifetime to gospel. She left behind a blueprint for faithfulness, excellence, and endurance in gospel music. Edna Gallman Cook. Edna Gallman Cook, born on February 27, 1917 in Columbia, South Carolina, was one of the most admired gospel singers of the mid-20th century. Known for her sweet high soprano and her ability to interpret songs with heartfelt sincerity, Cook became affectionately known as the Songbird of the South. She brought refinement and grace to gospel music, influencing generations of female vocalists who followed her path. Her career may have been cut short by tragedy, but her recordings remain treasures that continue to inspire gospel lovers today. Cook's father was a Baptist minister, so she grew up deeply immersed in church life. Her earliest training came in the choir, where her natural gift for music quickly shone through. After attending the District of Columbia Teachers College and later the Juilliard School of Music in New York, she returned to gospel with a fresh sense of artistry. Unlike many gospel singers of her era who were self-taught, Cook had formal classical training, and she used it to shape a singing style that was both technically exquisite and spiritually moving. In the late 1940s, Cook began recording professionally, quickly rising to prominence with her unique sound. Her breakthrough came with "Stop Gambler" in 1949, a song that showcased her storytelling ability and crystal-clear soprano. Over the next decade, she became one of the most popular gospel artists in the country, recording hits such as "Have You Got Good Religion" and "Angels, Angels, Angels." Cook's interpretations were known for their clarity and precision. She didn't just sing notes, she painted vivid pictures with her voice, bringing biblical stories to life in ways that captivated audiences. When you hear a gospel singer with a classically trained voice like Edna Gallman Cook, do you think it makes the music more powerful? Or do you prefer the raw, unpolished emotion of traditional gospel? One of the hallmarks of Cook's career was her ability to balance artistry with accessibility. She never allowed her classical background to overshadow the gospel message. Instead, she used her training to elevate gospel into something elegant without losing its spiritual fire. Her performances were often described as angelic, yet filled with conviction, giving her a unique place among gospel singers of her time. Cook was also known for her poise and professionalism. At a time when women in gospel often struggled for recognition, she commanded respect both on stage and in the recording studio. Her influence could be felt in the careers of later gospel divas such as Shirley Caesar and Inez Andrews, who admired her ability to merge technical excellence with heartfelt ministry. Sadly, Cook's life ended far too soon. On September 4, 1962, she died in a tragic car accident at the age of just 45. Her sudden death shocked the gospel community, which mourned the loss of a singer who still had so much more to give. Yet even in her relatively short career, she left behind a remarkable catalog of music that continues to be rediscovered and cherished by gospel fans today. Edna Gallman Cook's legacy is that of a trailblazer who showed that gospel could be both heavenly and human, both polished and passionate. She may be gone, but every time her soaring soprano rings out in songs like "Angels, Angels, Angels," listeners are reminded why she was truly the songbird of the South. Marie Knight. Marie Knight, born on June 1, 1920 in Sanford, Florida, and raised in Newark, New Jersey, was a gospel powerhouse whose career spanned over 6 decades. Best remembered for her electrifying partnership with Sister Rosetta Tharpe in the 1940s, Knight brought a rich contralto voice and commanding stage presence that helped expand gospel music's reach during its golden age. Though she often stood in the shadow of Tharpe's fame, Knight carved out her own legacy as a singer who bridged sacred and secular styles, leaving behind a body of work that continues to influence gospel and soul singers today. Knight's early years were steeped in the church. Her mother was a devout woman who encouraged her musical gift, and by her teenage years, Marie was singing with the gospel singers of Newark. Her big break came in 1946 when she met Sister Rosetta Tharpe at a gospel performance in New York. Impressed by Knight's vocal power and charisma, Tharpe invited her to tour together. Their partnership became one of the most dynamic duos in gospel history, blending Tharpe's groundbreaking guitar work with Knight's rich, soulful vocals. Together, they recorded hits like Didn't It Rain and Beams of Heaven. Their concerts were thrilling events marked by energy, improvisation, and an undeniable chemistry that drew massive audiences. At a time when gospel was still largely confined to churches, Tharpe and Knight brought it to concert halls and nightclubs, often sparking controversy among traditionalists, but introducing gospel to new listeners. Knight's voice, described as smoky, yet powerful, perfectly complemented Tharpe's guitar and vocals, creating a sound that was both joyful and deeply spiritual. When gospel singers perform in secular venues to reach wider audiences, do you think it helps spread the message of faith more effectively, or does it risk diluting the sacred meaning of the music? After parting ways with Tharpe in the early 1950s, Knight pursued her own career. She recorded both gospel and secular music, venturing into R&B and pop, with songs like Cry Me a River and I Thought I Told You Not to Tell Them. While her secular career brought some recognition, she never abandoned her gospel roots. In fact, her ability to move seamlessly between genres made her one of the most versatile performers of her time. Knight later returned fully to gospel recording albums such as Marie Knight Today, which reaffirmed her place in the church world. She was also known for her electrifying live performances, which combined vocal precision with emotional depth. Even in her later years, she continued to tour, often singing the same songs she had performed with Tharpe decades earlier, but with a deeper richness that only life experience could bring. Despite personal challenges, including the devastating loss of her 2 children in a house fire in 1961, Knight remained committed to her faith and her music. Her resilience inspired many as she poured her grief into her ministry through song. Marie Knight passed away on August 30, 2009, at the age of 89. Her funeral was a celebration of a life dedicated to music and ministry, with tributes recognizing her as a pioneer who helped bring gospel to the world stage. Today, Marie Knight is remembered not just as Sister Rosetta Tharpe's partner, but as a gospel icon in her own right. Her voice, her poise, and her courage to step outside traditional boundaries made her a trailblazer who helped shape the sound and spirit of gospel for generations to come. Brother Joe May. Brother Joe May, born on November 9, 1912 in Macon, Mississippi, became one of gospel's most powerful and unforgettable voices, earning the nickname the Thunderbolt of the Midwest. Known for his booming, commanding tenor and his ability to deliver songs with unmatched fire, May was considered one of the finest male vocalists in gospel's golden age. Though his career was relatively short compared to some of his peers, his influence was massive, both in the church and in shaping the sound of future soul and R&B singers. May grew up in a deeply religious family, and like many gospel greats, began singing in church at an early age. His voice was extraordinary from the start, marked by strength, clarity, and a preacher's intensity. After moving to East St. Louis, Illinois, he became deeply involved in the gospel scene of the Midwest. His big break came when he joined Willie Mae Ford Smith's National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses, where his talent caught the attention of major gospel promoters and record labels. In 1949, May signed with Specialty Records, the same label that would later launch Little Richard. His very first recording, Search Me, Lord, became a gospel hit and established him as a national star. Known for his ability to sustain long, powerful notes and drive audiences into a frenzy, May was soon nicknamed the Thunderbolt of the Midwest. His live performances were legendary. Audiences often wept, shouted, or fell to their knees as he sang. Songs like Walk in Jerusalem and Don't Let the Devil Ride became staples in churches and concerts, showcasing his unmatched vocal energy. When you hear a gospel singer with a voice as powerful as Brother Joe May's, do you think the sheer strength of the voice is what moves people most, or is it the spirit behind the sound? What set May apart was his ability to merge church tradition with a style that bordered on the theatrical. He often strutted across the stage, used dramatic gestures, and poured every ounce of himself into his performances. This showmanship made him a forerunner to soul singers like Sam Cooke and Wilson Pickett, who were influenced by his ability to fuse sacred passion with raw vocal power. Despite his talent, May faced challenges outside of the gospel circuit. His music was immensely popular in the Black community, but because he refused to sing secular music, his fame never crossed fully into the mainstream in the way that Cooke's or Aretha Franklin's later would. He believed gospel was a calling, not just a career, and he never compromised his commitment to the church. For this reason, he remained beloved among gospel audiences as a man of integrity who sang only for God's glory. Brother Joe May's career spanned just over 2 decades, but in that time he recorded more than 30 singles and albums, leaving behind a catalog of gospel classics. He was also admired as a mentor to younger singers, encouraging them to embrace their unique styles while staying true to the gospel message. Sadly, Brother Joe May's life ended too soon. He passed away on July 14, 1972, at the age of 59. His funeral drew gospel luminaries and fans from across the nation, all paying tribute to the man whose voice had shaken churches and concert halls alike. Today, Brother Joe May is remembered as one of gospel's great male powerhouses, a singer who could move hearts with his thunderous sound and unwavering conviction. His influence still echoes in gospel and soul music, proving that his thunder hasn't faded even decades after his passing. Ruth Davis. Ruth. Baby Sis Davis, born on April 25, 1928 in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania was the powerhouse leader of the famous Davis Sisters, one of gospel's most beloved and enduring groups. Known for her thunderous contralto voice, commanding stage presence, and ability to hold together one of gospel's most dynamic ensembles, Davis left an indelible mark on the golden age of gospel music. Her vision, discipline, and passion made the Davis Sisters a force to be reckoned with and set a standard for female gospel groups that would inspire generations. The Davis Sisters were formed in 1945 in Philadelphia, originally made up of Ruth and her sisters Alfreda, Audrey, Thelma, and Imogene. Ruth, the youngest of the group, quickly emerged as the anchor. Her deep, resonant voice provided the foundation for their harmonies, while her bold leadership kept the group's focus sharp. The Davis Sisters' style was fiery and spirit-filled, combining traditional church-rooted gospel with the raw emotion that came to define the quartet's sound. Their motto was simple: sing with power, sing with conviction, and let the Spirit lead. The group's breakthrough came in 1947 when they recorded with Apex Records, but their career soared when they signed with Savoy Records in the early 1950s. Under Ruth's leadership, they released classics such as 12 Gates to the City, Too Close to Heaven, and Sinner Man, Where You Gonna Run. To these songs showcased the group's intense harmonies and emotional delivery, with Ruth's contralto often leading the charge. Their records became staples in Black households across America, and they quickly rose to the top tier of gospel ensembles. When you listen to family-based gospel groups like the Davis Sisters, do you think their unique chemistry comes more from shared talent or from the bond of being family? Singing together, Ruth's leadership style was strong and uncompromising. She demanded excellence from her sisters and insisted that their performances reflect both artistry and spirituality. Her strictness paid off. The Davis sisters became one of the tightest, most polished gospel groups of their era, known for their ability to move seamlessly from tender ballads to thunderous shout songs. They toured nationally, sharing stages with giants like Mahalia Jackson and Clara Ward, and became one of Savoy Records' best-selling acts. But Ruth Davis wasn't just a singer, she was a mentor. Under her guidance, the group nurtured future gospel stars, including Jackie Verdell, whose powerhouse soprano would later influence secular legends like Aretha Franklin. Ruth gave Verdell this platform to shine while keeping the Davis sisters firmly rooted in their gospel mission. Despite their success, life wasn't without challenges. The Davis sisters experienced lineup changes, internal conflicts, and the strain of constant touring. Yet Ruth's steady hand always kept the group together. Her deep voice became symbolic of their identity, grounded, unshakable, and powerful. Tragically, Ruth Davis's life ended suddenly when she suffered a heart attack and passed away on December 2, 1970, at just 42 years old. Her death shocked the gospel world, as she was still in her prime, and the Davis sisters remained a leading gospel act. After her passing, the group struggled to maintain the same impact, but Ruth's legacy endured in their recordings and the many artists they had inspired. Today, Ruth Davis is remembered as one of gospel's great contraltos and as the backbone of one of its most celebrated family groups. Her leadership proved that women could guide, innovate, and dominate in a genre often led by men. Every time a female gospel group raises the roof with power and harmony, echoes of Ruth Davis's influence can still be heard. Eugene Smith. Eugene Smith, born on December 25, 1921 in Chicago, Illinois, became one of gospel music's most enduring voices as a founding member and longtime lead singer of the Roberta Martin Singers. Known for his smooth, golden tenor and his ability to communicate deep emotion with seemingly effortless delivery, Smith helped shape the classic Chicago gospel sound that influenced countless artists who followed. His career spanned more than 4 decades, making him one of the most consistent and beloved male vocalists in gospel history. Smith grew up in Chicago during the height of gospel's early development. In the 1930s, he came under the mentorship of Roberta Martin, one of gospel's pioneering female leaders who formed the Roberta Martin Singers in 1933. Eugene became one of her earliest recruits and quickly emerged as the male lead. His voice was refined, yet filled with conviction, perfectly balancing the smoothness of quartet singing with the passion of traditional gospel. With the Roberta Martin Singers, Smith recorded a string of hits that became gospel standards, including Only a Look, Grace, and God Specializes. His voice carried an intimacy that made listeners feel he was singing directly to them, offering comfort, encouragement, and faith. Unlike some gospel singers of his era, who relied heavily on vocal acrobatics, Smith sang with sincerity and clarity, embodying the message of the song. His understated yet powerful delivery became a defining feature of the Roberta Martin Singers' style. When you listen to gospel singers like Eugene Smith, do you think the power comes more from vocal skill or from the sincerity of the message behind the song? Smith's role in the Roberta Martin Singers was not only musical, but also spiritual. He was known for his humility, professionalism, and steady presence, helping the group maintain cohesion over decades. The ensemble became one of the most influential gospel groups of the mid-20th century, setting the standard for mixed male-female groups and paving the way for choirs and ensembles that followed. Smith's voice was central to their sound, often anchoring harmonies and delivering memorable solos that stayed in the hearts of audiences long after the music stopped. The Roberta Martin Singers toured nationally and internationally, bringing gospel to audiences who had never experienced its beauty before. Smith's performances were particularly admired for their ability to comfort listeners in times of sorrow. Many of the group's most beloved songs were ones of encouragement and endurance, and Smith's voice brought those messages to life with unmatched authenticity. Even as gospel music began to evolve in the 1960s and 1970s with new sounds and contemporary influences emerging, Smith remained true to the traditional style he had helped pioneer. He continued performing with the Roberta Martin Singers until the group disbanded in 1969 following Martin's declining health and passing. Afterward, he occasionally performed in reunions and special gospel programs, where fans celebrated him as a living link to gospel's golden age. Eugene Smith passed away on May 9, 2009, at the age of 87. His death closed the chapter on one of gospel's most important eras, but his voice lives on in the recordings that remain essential to the genre's history. Today, Eugene Smith is remembered as the golden tenor of the Roberta Martin singers, a man who showed that gospel did not always need fireworks or theatrics. Sometimes a sincere, steady voice delivering God's message with love and clarity was enough to move mountains. His artistry continues to inspire singers who understand that gospel's power is not only in how high or how loud a note can be sung, but in how deeply it can touch the soul. Julius Cheeks. Julius Cheeks, born on August 7, 1929 in Spartanburg, South Carolina, was one of gospel's most electrifying performers and a voice that reshaped the sound of the male quartet tradition. As the fiery lead singer of the sensational Nightingales, Cheeks brought an unmatched rawness and theatricality to gospel. His raspy emotional delivery and dramatic stage presence inspired a whole generation of gospel and soul artists, earning him recognition as one of the great innovators of the genre. Cheeks grew up in the South, where the quartet style of gospel was flourishing. He joined the sensational Nightingales in the late 1940s, quickly establishing himself as their dominant voice. His singing was unlike anything gospel had heard before, gritty, intense, and filled with a preacher's authority. He didn't just sing the lyrics, he shouted them, groaned them, and wrung every ounce of feeling from them. Songs like Somewhere to Lay My Head and Burying Ground became showcases for his emotional delivery, turning gospel concerts into unforgettable spiritual encounters. Cheeks was also one of the first gospel singers to incorporate heavy dramatics into his performances. He would fall to his knees, mid-song, wipe sweat from his face as though in battle, or cry out like a man wrestling with the spirit. These elements thrilled audiences and made him one of the most talked-about gospel singers of the 1950s and 1960s. At a time when gospel was often performed with polished restraint, Cheeks embodied unfiltered passion. Do you think the drama and emotion of singers like Julius Cheeks make gospel more powerful, or does it sometimes overshadow the message of the song itself? His influence stretched far beyond gospel. Soul and R&B pioneers like Wilson Pickett, James Brown, and Otis Redding studied Cheeks' style, borrowing elements of his raspy growl and dramatic stage presence. Even secular artists admitted that Cheeks' ability to hold an audience in the palm of his hand shaped their own approaches to performance. In this way, he bridged sacred and secular music, helping shape the DNA of American popular music while staying committed to gospel. Despite his fame, Cheeks remained deeply tied to the church. He often described his singing as an extension of preaching, a way to deliver the gospel message in a form people could feel in their bones. His performances were not about entertainment alone, they were acts of ministry. Audiences left not just inspired musically, but spiritually renewed. In the late 1960s, Cheeks left the sensational Nightingales and formed his own group, the Knights. While they never reached the same legendary status as the Nightingales, Cheeks' reputation as a powerhouse performer remained intact. He continued to record and perform into the 1970s, though health struggles eventually slowed him down. Julius Cheeks passed away on January 27, 1982, at the age of 52. His death cut short a career that had already left an indelible mark on gospel history. To this day, many quartet singers cite him as their greatest influence, and his recordings remain benchmarks of gospel intensity. Today, Julius Cheeks is remembered as gospel's explosive showman, the man who proved that gospel could be dramatic, emotional, and electrifying without losing its spiritual essence. His legacy lives on, not only in gospel, but also in the soul and R&B traditions that borrowed from his groundbreaking style. Reverend James Herndon. Reverend James Herndon, born on August 24, 1926 in Rockford, Illinois, was a gifted pianist, singer, and songwriter who became a key figure in the golden era of gospel music. Best known as a longtime member of the Caravans, one of gospel's most celebrated groups, Herndon played a vital role behind the scenes as both accompanist and arranger. While the spotlight often shone on towering vocalists like Albertina Walker, Shirley Caesar, and Inez Andrews, Herndon's steady presence at the piano bench and his contributions to the group's sound made him an indispensable part of their success. Herndon's musical journey began in the church where he first developed his skill as a pianist. By the time he joined the Caravans in the 1950s, gospel was entering its golden era, and the group was quickly rising to prominence. Herndon's masterful piano playing added a sophisticated yet spirited foundation to their performances. His playing style combined rhythmic drive with melodic sensitivity, perfectly complementing the powerhouse voices that defined the Caravans' sound. In addition to his musicianship, Herndon occasionally stepped forward as a vocalist. He had a smooth, understated delivery that contrasted beautifully with the fiery singing of his colleagues. His voice can be heard on songs such as "What Kind of Man Is This?" and "He Won't Deny Me." While he wasn't the group's most celebrated soloist, his contributions as a singer added variety and depth to their repertoire. More importantly, his arranging and directing talents ensured that the Caravans' sound remained cohesive, disciplined, and powerful. Do you think the true strength of a legendary gospel group lies more in its star soloists or in the musicians and arrangers like Reverend Herndon who shaped the overall sound? Herndon's role in the Caravans also extended to songwriting. He penned and arranged several songs that became staples of their catalog, contributing to the group's reputation as one of gospel's finest ensembles. His ability to craft songs that balanced lyrical depth with musical accessibility helped the Caravans connect with both church congregations and concert audiences. Even as the group underwent lineup changes, launching the solo careers of singers like Shirley Caesar and Dorothy Norwood, Herndon remained a constant presence. His humility and dedication allowed him to thrive in a supporting role, ensuring the group always had a strong musical anchor. For this reason, many considered him the unsung hero of the Caravans, the glue that held together a group full of powerhouse personalities. Outside of the Caravans, Herndon continued to serve in ministry as a pastor and choir director, balancing his calling to the church with his career in music. He was admired for his quiet strength and for the way he modeled servant leadership in a field often dominated by showmanship. Reverend James Herndon passed away on June 30, 2008, at the age of 81. His death was mourned deeply by the gospel community, particularly those who understood how vital his role had been in the rise of one of gospel's greatest groups. Today, Herndon is remembered as more than just a pianist or background member. He was a builder of sound, a man who ensured the Caravans' music carried both spiritual power and musical excellence. His life is a reminder that in gospel, just as in ministry, greatness is often found not in the spotlight, but in the steady hands and faithful hearts working behind the scenes. Reverend Alex Bradford. Reverend Alex Bradford, born on January 23, 1927 in Bessemer, Alabama, was one of gospel's most creative and flamboyant figures. A trailblazer in both sound and stagecraft. Bradford was a singer-songwriter, choir director, and preacher whose bold style shaped modern gospel and inspired countless artists across genres. His ability to combine sacred conviction with theatrical flair earned him the nickname Gospel's Dramatic Visionary. Raised in the Deep South, Bradford showed musical brilliance early. By age 4, he was already performing solos in church, and as a teenager, he was directing choirs. After moving to Chicago in the 1940s, he became part of the thriving gospel community, rubbing shoulders with legends such as Mahalia Jackson and Thomas A. Dorsey. Unlike many of his peers, Bradford didn't shy away from showmanship. He incorporated dramatic gestures, shouted refrains, and high-flying falsetto notes into his performances, creating a style that was both deeply spiritual and dazzlingly entertaining. In the 1950s, Bradford formed the Bradford Singers, and later the Bradford Specials, which became vehicles for his innovative vision. His 1954 hit, Too Close to Heaven, often called I'm Too Close, sold over 1 million copies, a monumental achievement for a gospel record at the time. The song's success made him a household name and demonstrated gospel's ability to rival pop and R&B in commercial appeal. Bradford also wrote and recorded other classics such as Climbing Up the Mountain and Let the Lord Be Seen in Me, which became staples in churches across America. When gospel singers like Alex Bradford push the boundaries of style and add theatrical elements, do you think it makes the message more powerful? Or does it risk distracting from the sacred meaning of the music? Bradford's voice was unmistakable, a high elastic tenor capable of sliding from smooth croons to piercing falsettos. This versatility influenced an entire generation of singers, particularly in soul and R&B. Little Richard famously acknowledged Bradford's falsetto as a key inspiration for his own vocal style, while artists like James Brown and Ray Charles also drew from his passion and delivery. In this way, Bradford helped shape not just gospel, but the very DNA of American popular music. Beyond his recordings, Bradford made history on Broadway. In 1961, he starred in Langston Hughes' Black Nativity, which brought gospel music to mainstream theater audiences. His performance electrified crowds and introduced gospel to people who had never set foot in a black church. He went on to tour internationally with gospel musicals, spreading the sound and spirit of gospel across Europe and Africa. Bradford also answered his pastoral calling. Ordained as a minister, he led congregations and used his platform to emphasize gospel as ministry first, performance second. Even when dazzling audiences, he made clear that his mission was to win souls, not applause. Tragically, Reverend Alex Bradford's life ended too soon. He passed away on February 15, 1978, at the age of 51 after suffering a stroke. His death robbed gospel of one of its boldest innovators, but his influence continues to resonate. Today, Bradford is remembered as both a showman and a minister, someone who proved gospel could be both sacred and spectacular. His songs remain standards, his stagecraft continues to inspire, and his voice echoes in the sounds of artists who followed his trailblazing path. Reverend Alex Bradford wasn't just a singer. He was a visionary who redefined what gospel could be. Reverend Cleophas Robinson Sr. Reverend Cleophas Robinson Sr., born on March 18, 1932 in Canton, Mississippi, became one of gospel's most beloved and respected figures, earning the nickname the Singing Preacher. With a voice that combined the authority of the pulpit and the passion of gospel music, Robinson left behind a legacy as both a pastor and recording artist who touched audiences across the globe. His ability to merge preaching with singing set him apart from many of his contemporaries, making every performance feel like a worship service. Robinson's early years were spent in the church, where his love for gospel music and ministry first took shape. He relocated to St. Louis, Missouri as a young man and quickly became a fixture in the city's gospel scene. His talent as both a preacher and singer soon set him on a path that would carry him beyond local fame. By the 1950s, Robinson began recording, and his booming baritone voice caught the attention of gospel audiences nationwide. He signed with Peacock Records, one of the premier gospel labels of the era, and began releasing songs that are now considered classics. Tracks like Wrapped Up, Tied Up, Tangled Up in Jesus, and Since Jesus Came Into My Life highlighted his ability to infuse songs with a preacher's urgency. Unlike many artists who separated their preaching and singing, Robinson made both inseparable, often breaking into spoken exhortations in the middle of songs, urging audiences to strengthen their faith. Robinson's ministry extended well beyond the recording studio. In St. Louis, he pastored the Greater Bethlehem Baptist Church, where he served faithfully while balancing a national gospel career. For Robinson, singing was not entertainment, it was an extension of his ministry. His church members often remarked that his sermons carried the same musical cadence as his songs, and his songs often carried the same spiritual authority as his sermons. When you hear a preacher who sings as powerfully as he preaches, do you think the impact is greater because the message reaches both the mind and the soul? During the height of his career in the 1960s and 1970s, Robinson toured extensively, performing at gospel programs, conventions, and revivals across the United States. His performances were known for moving audiences to tears, shouts, and even conversion experiences. Alongside contemporaries like James Cleveland, Alex Bradford, and Shirley Caesar Robinson, helped usher in an era when gospel singers became both national figures and community leaders. One of Robinson's enduring strengths was his versatility. He could deliver fiery up-tempo numbers that electrified congregations, or he could bring an audience to quiet reflection with tender ballads. This balance made him relatable to listeners of all ages and backgrounds. His recordings spanned decades, proving his staying power even as gospel music evolved through changing eras. Reverend Robinson also mentored younger ministers and singers, encouraging them to see gospel as a sacred calling rather than just a career. His example of blending pastoral leadership with musical excellence became a model for others who sought to balance both worlds. On July 2, 1998, Reverend Cleophas Robinson Sr. passed away at the age of 66. His death marked the end of an era in St. Louis gospel, but his influence lives on through his recordings, his congregation, and the many artists who credit him as an inspiration. Today, Reverend Cleophas Robinson Sr. is remembered not only as the singing preacher, but also as a bridge between pulpit and stage, sermon and song. His voice remains a testament to the idea that gospel music is not just performance, it is ministry, capable of stirring both heart and spirit. The stories of these gospel legends remind us that faith and music have always been intertwined, shaping not only the church but also the very foundation of American culture. From voices that thundered across revival tents to songs that crossed into mainstream radio, each of these artists left a mark that cannot be erased. Yet the deeper question remains, how do we measure their true greatness? Is it in the awards and recognition they earned, the number of records they sold, or in the lives they touched through spirit-filled performances? Some believe gospel music should never stray from the church walls, while others argue that its expansion into theaters, nightclubs, and even pop charts helped spread the message further than ever before. What cannot be denied is that these singers carried both burden and blessing, often facing hardships that tested their faith, but never silenced their voices. Their legacies stand as proof that gospel music is not just art, it is testimony. So what do you think? Should gospel music stay rooted in tradition or continue evolving to reach wider audiences? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep this conversation alive.